Part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Foreign Secretary calls for a doubling down in support for Ukraine as Russia threatens attacks on Western targets.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 27th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Well, Liz Truss will use a speech in London tonight to call for sending heavy weapons, tanks and planes to Ukraine, warning that if President Putin wins, the world will never feel the same again.
Late last night, Russia cut gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria, calling the countries unfriendly.
It comes as the UK's main supplier of NHS ambulances suspends normal production to convert military vehicles into armoured ambulances. Our Home Affairs editor Mark White will have the details.
The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is once again under pressure from Cabinet colleagues to tackle the cost of living crisis, as new data reveals that 6 in 10 Brits have had to cut back on essentials like food and medicine to get by.
You can join in any of the discussions we'll be having throughout the programme. It's always lovely to have you on board. It's always lovely to hear what you have to say. You can tweet at GB News or...
You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. And whilst you're there at your computer, you can also vote for us in the Trick Awards.
Yeah, the Television Radio Industry Club, we're on the long list. We hope to make the short list at trick.org.uk. You just tick a few wee boxes. Anything that says GB News Breakfast or anything that says with the words Eamonn or Isabel in it, we're there in various categories, and that would be very, very much appreciated.
Well, to our top story now, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, will use a speech in London this evening to warn that the fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance, calling for increased defence spending to turn the tide.
Well, she's also going to say that Western countries should send heavy weapons, tanks and planes, and that they must be prepared for the long haul.
Well, it comes after Russia threatened strikes against Western targets in response to NATO supplying weapons to support the Ukrainian war effort.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the weapons would be a legitimate target for Russia's military. And yesterday, on this very programme, the Armed Forces Minister James Heapy told us about what Britain was doing to support those Ukrainian efforts.
We are sending, there's 14 armoured vehicles that have arrived. There's some precision missile systems. There's 1,000 medium-range anti-tank weapon systems. There's 4,000 night sights. So that's just another week in the work of the MOD. Some of that stuff we will have only decided to send last week and was ready available. Other stuff will have been weeks in gestation to get it ready to ship. Thereafter, obviously, there is a job of work to do with the Ukrainian armed forces to train them in how to use the systems effectively, and thus far that's been spectacularly successful.
Well, as tensions ratchet up, Russian energy firm Gazprom has announced that it has suspended gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria after Putin issued an ultimatum that foreign buyers would have to pay in rubles.
For more on this, we're joined by former UN correspondent for Al Jazeera English, Mark Seddon, who was also previously a speechwriter for the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon.
Yeah, very warm welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
Right. So, who's the winner here? Russia cutting off the supplies or Poland and who was it, Bulgaria? What's going to happen?
Well, I mean, there aren't any winners in this. And this is the really rather frightening thing, because we are looking at a situation that seems to be escalating at a time when the Secretary-General, as you've just seen from your pictures, has been in Moscow. He's met with the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. He's gone to Poland. He's going to go to Kiev. And then he's going to possibly go to Moldova, which, of course, is now potentially in the front line as the Russian line of expansion across the Black Sea coast towards Moldova is planned and continues to roll out, obviously facing fierce resistance. But, the big issue is, this war has got to end at some time. It's a question of how and a question of when. And I think this escalation it's a situation we haven't really seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis, the potential use of or threats of use of nuclear weapons. This is a deeply disturbing time, and a time when all focus really has to be on trying to get a ceasefire and a negotiated peace.
Yeah. Who are the peacemakers? I mean, you talk about peace there. Historically, you look at Kissinger, or you look at someone like Mitchell in Northern Ireland, and there is always someone there to broker, someone who pushes it all forward, someone that both sides will listen to. Have we got a player like that on the stage?
I don't know, Eamonn, because I think What's worrying about this time, it's taken a long time for the United Nations, for the Secretary-General to get directly involved by taking himself off in person. That is important. People say, oh, well, he's bound to face, he's not going to get any success straight away. Well, he's not. But, these things take some time, and it's so important what he's doing. We've seen President Macron, for instance, taking his own initiatives. We've seen initiatives by the Israeli Prime Minister, by the Austrian Chancellor. But it's been kind of scattergun. So these big world figures do seem to be absent, and what we're seeing is a ratcheting up of the conflict, almost as though nobody wants to put a stop to it. And yet, as the longer this war continues, the more death and destruction we're going to see. Quite clearly, we've got this terrible refugee problem, as you can see. But also, people are forgetting Ukraine is a great food basket. And this is having a terrible economic impact, and will have a longer-term economic impact. And there's the bigger risk of this spilling across the borders, which has to be avoided at all costs, I would have thought.
Yeah, and Mark said, and you say, nobody seems to be wanting to try and put a stop to this. Liz Truss, in this speech tonight, expected to say we should get ready for the long haul on this, and she's also expected to be highly critical of those structures like the United Nations that you just mentioned, having let us get to this situation. There were some calls yesterday after that meeting in Moscow that Guterres should have gone to Moscow back in January, might never have been in this position. Meanwhile, Labour saying that sounds like an admission of failure from Liz Truss. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the Guterres should have been much more active. 200-odd former UN officials signed a letter a week or so ago calling him to do just this. Of course, the UN has been very, very active behind the scenes. It's been working very closely and supportive of Turkish attempts to get people around the table. But, now is not the time to be ramping things up when the Secretary-General is doing this work. So in that respect, I think that what we haven't seen enough of are other members of the Security Council who are quite right in condemning Russia outright for the fact that it's broken the UN Charter, invaded a member state against international law. But there needs to be much greater coordination, it seems to me, between the Security Council and the Secretary-General. So that when the Secretary-General goes to see Putin and Sergei Lavrov and President Zelensky, everybody's speaking from the same hymn sheet. And that is this desperate attempt now that's needed to de-escalate, because we haven't been in a position since 1961-62 when there's been the possible use of nuclear weapons. And we're at a time, but it hasn't just happened, of course, because don't forget, President Trump pulled the United States out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. So that a couple of years ago. So all of the sort of structures that were built up, the armament control agreements, all of these things have become weakened. And so we're in a situation whereby it's not like a Cold War, it's almost becoming a hot war. De-escalation is the key.
Mark, in your time, of course, you have been a UN correspondent. What about the UN as an institution, as a body? And you talk about, what Trump has deconstructed. How does the UN come out of all of this, particularly, things like the Security Council, Russia having a voice, Russia actually being listened to on their platform instead of ostracised?
Well, I think you'll find the majority of opinion. You've seen the majority of opinion, what is effectively the Parliament of the United Nations, which is the General Assembly, very condemning Russia by overwhelming numbers of votes on two and a third occasion yesterday, when the General Assembly said if the veto is to be used, there needs to be a full explanation given to the General Assembly, i.e. every member state of the United Nations, as to why this has happened. Now, the Security Council reform, increasing the numbers, all of these things have been pushed for years. Different members at different times have resisted change. Britain and France haven't wanted to lose their place, for instance. So it's difficult. But I think that what we are seeing is there are, of course, a number of member states that are saying, well, absolutely, Russia has invaded Ukraine. That's against the UN Charter. But you're now telling us to oppose Russia, but you went and invaded Iraq, Britain and America, against international law. So I think what's really needed is consistency. Now, once you can get a degree of consistency, you can begin to get much more agreement. But by the way, I think it's really quite significant that the majority of countries around the world, the member states, have voted now to condemn Russia on 3 occasions. And they've told the Secretary-General to go away and come up with a plan to bring about peace and security, which is what the UN was set up to do. It's got a real fight on its hands to prove how effective it can be. But the UN can only ever be as effective as countries, as member states can be. And right now, I think the Secretary-General needs the backing of Britain and America, France, and of course, China. China is key to this. At the moment, China is very much with Russia. And that needs to change.
Well, Antonio Guterres heading to Kyiv today to meet with Zelensky. Undoubtedly, the United Nations will be continued to be talked about throughout the day. But for now, we'll leave it there. Mark Seddon, really good to have you on this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We stay with the whole issue of Ukraine. And Britain's main supplier of ambulances has suspended normal production for the NHS. Instead, it's carrying out the work of converting armoured vehicles into ambulances for use in the war.
Yeah, the Venari Group in East Yorkshire has already converted 50 former British military vehicles, with more on the way. Here's our security editor, Mark White, with this report.
Inside this vast facility, they're working flat out. A Yorkshire ambulance manufacturer now playing its part in the Ukrainian war effort. But these are no ordinary ambulances. They are specially converted former British military armoured vehicles, providing Ukrainian medics with far better protection in the conflict zone. The company, Venari, normally supplies the vast majority of UK ambulances. But all that's on hold, as everyone here is desperate to help Ukraine.
Something that we've seen on this project, like no other, is that the guys are coming from the homes where they've been watching the news with the war unfolding. And for them, and for myself, and for all of us, it doesn't seem to be business at the minute. This is personal. And the guys are building with that personal edge to them. They're working through the break times. They're starting an hour earlier without clocking in. They're finishing later, with, whilst clocking out before. We're all putting in over and above. It's nothing by comparison to what the Ukrainians are doing on a daily basis.
Less than a month after they started this process, the company has already converted around 50 armoured vehicles into ambulances. The first 15 have now been delivered, driven to the region by Venari staff and handed over to Ukrainian medics. The Ukrainian authorities tell us they've been losing around 15 ambulances a day in the conflict. So these specially designed armoured ambulances, better able to resist gunfire and explosions, have never been more urgently needed. At the very least, the Russians have been indiscriminate in their targeting. But many Ukrainians claim their medics have, in some instances, been deliberately targeted. Earlier this month, this former NHS ambulance was badly damaged by shell fire outside a hospital in southern Ukraine. The loss of ambulances has forced locals to use completely unsuitable vehicles to transport the injured.
An ambulance is a good piece of kit and it's designed to do its job, but take away that infrastructure, take away the safety and add in maybe sniper fire and maybe close-on explosions and the rugged terrain of a conflict zone, and you've now got the perfect vehicle to do that.
It was Conservative MP Andrew Percy, himself a volunteer paramedic, who came up with the idea of giving these ex-military vehicles a new lease of life.
They were all in their battle, army green with the cam webbing on it, the camouflage webbing, and they had the spent shells. So these vehicles have seen action in Afghanistan, surplus to requirements, and now being reprofiled in this way. And they are sadly needed. The fact that you need to have armoured ambulances is in itself a bit sad, really. It speaks to the aggression with which the Russians are attacking Ukraine.
Every day, more of these ambulances roll out of this plant en route to Ukraine. Private donations and government grants should ensure dozens more are converted and sent off in the weeks ahead. Mark White, GB News, Goole in East Yorkshire.
Being done there, 6:15 is the time. The headlines are these. Food banks sent out more than 2.1 million parcels to families in the year to March.
The Trussell Trust is warning of an accelerating food crisis in the UK as the cost of living continues to rise.
The Automobile Association says reported plans to move MOTs to every 2 years to counter the cost of living crisis could be dangerous. The association warns it could make roads less safe and increase costs for drivers due to higher repair bills.
The editor of the Mail on Sunday has declined to a request to meet the Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle to discuss the paper's recent report about Angela Rayner. Publishing his response, David Dillon said journalists must be free to report what they are told by MPs and should not take instruction from officials.
Digital rights watchdog group Citizen Lab recently revealed that electronic devices connected to government networks, including some inside the Prime Minister's office, appeared to be infected with this Israeli-made spyware that we've been talking about in the past week called Pegasus.
So, if the Prime Minister can fall prey to it, how much of a threat is spyware to any of us? Let's speak now to Adrianus Warmenhoven, who is a defensive strategist at cybersecurity firm NordVPN. Very good morning to you. And I suppose is the big concern that we could all fall, vulnerable to this from whatever it might be, whether it's a listening device in our house that we use as sort of a Google or an Alexa, whatever it might be. How can we protect ourselves from malicious intent?
Good morning first to you as well. The first thing you need to realize that things like Pegasus, those are state-sponsored or cyber mercenary systems. And there's not a lot a single person can do about it. You can read about it in the news, but don't worry about it too much, because there's nothing you can do to defend yourselves against it. However,
So I was going to say, does that include governments? Is there anything they can do to protect themselves? Because obviously they have been infected.
Governments, your own cybersecurity, GCHQ, is pretty up there and is really good in defending those systems. If you follow their instructions, you should be quite safe. Just let the people that know about it, these things, protect you, and don't use your own private mail or things like that. That's not a good idea. That's for governments. But for private people, you have to learn some healthy habits, just like in normal life. Malware is becoming just like any common disease, where you wash your hands normally to don't get infected. You have to learn some habits online as well.
So could they, Adrianus, can they actually tell who planted the spyware there?
That's almost impossible, because the spyware, first off, is a commercial product, so you can only pinpoint the vendor, and in this case it's Israel's NSO group. If you are lucky, then the incident responders, those are the people that do the forensics on these matters, they can tell by various traces where it might have happened. But if it happened in a foreign country, like on an airport or anywhere else, then it's almost impossible to tell who was the initial vector.
What percentage of us do you think are being affected by these sorts of things? How widespread a problem is this?
I think more than 90%. That's, it doesn't mean that you're infected, but there will be attempts on you every day, every single day, every minute. And it's like a business model. It's nothing special to the criminals. It's just like mass mugging, if you want.
Gosh, I mean that is really scary.
You were on holiday a little while ago and you said that you were having a conversation with someone and the next day stuff popped up on your phone.
Adrianus, honestly, there was a tennis player I was talking about. Well, these apartments are nice. It'd be lovely to live here. I could go on with the conversations that I was having, and each time, the next day, there were then adverts relating to those subjects. Which, I mean, we sort of casually laugh about that and say, that fits us as consumers and whatever. But to me, that is a form of malware, spyware.
Yes. We have a category called adware, which is advertisements and these kind of things. And the regulations for advertisements in the previous years have not been strict enough. So we even had cases where your television emitted a beep for a specific advert, and your mobile phone listened to that beep and then told the advertiser, okay, this specific person just saw your television ad.
Yeah.
The cyber domain is quite big at the moment.
Okay.
Well,
I was just going to say goodbye to Adrianus Warmenhoven, and I was going to wish you a happy King's Day, because I spotted that you're speaking to us from the Netherlands. Huge national holiday today. You'll all be dressed in orange, and I hope you have a fabulous party. Yes. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much. Nice day.
Thank you, Adrianus. They're all dressed in orange.
Everyone dresses in orange. Yeah, it's a huge national holiday. Every year they get this day off. Yeah, if you're in Amsterdam, for example, the canals are filled with people on boats dressed in orange. The streets of the children are all out selling things, and it's a really fun party.
We have the same celebration in Northern Ireland.
Oh, but it's a bit more political there. William of Orange.
They're still all dressed in orange.
Well, there's a link, I believe, Willem. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Stay with us. After that, we'll be in Glasgow, finding out what's happening to the recycling there. That's after your forecast.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a chilly start out there this morning, but actually most places are dry, most places are bright, and it's a day of sunny spells for the vast majority. High pressure clearly dominating our weather at the moment. It's drifting in from the north, so we've still got a bit of a chilly easterly breeze around the southern flank of that high, but with high pressure in place, light winds, clear skies, and as a result, a touch of frost in places as we start the day. But soon enough, with the sunshine, it will start to feel more pleasant as temperatures rise. It's still going to be a bit colder along the east coast of Scotland and northern England, but with less cloud compared to yesterday, actually, it's going to be pleasant enough this afternoon. Highs in Newcastle and Hull of 9 to 10 Celsius, Cardiff, Southampton 14 degrees, Belfast 12 degrees. So those temperatures are a little lower compared to the last couple of days, but I think for many, with the sunny skies and the light winds, it's going to be a fine day. Still some cloud drifting around, as will be the case overnight. Parts of northern Scotland will see a few showers, and across central Scotland some patchy cloud, likewise across the Midlands and East Anglia. Now away from the cloud, with again light winds and cold air in place, a widespread frost is expected in sheltered parts of the country. But once again, despite the chill tomorrow morning, plenty of blue skies out there first thing. Still some cloud floating here and there, particularly for eastern and central parts of England, perhaps northern Scotland. But plenty of places will just see sunny spells and it will stay dry. 14 to 15 Celsius, southern England, South Wales, 10 to 12 for northern England, 13 there for Glasgow, 12 for Belfast. Into Saturday, well, it stays mostly dry and bright. The cloud will thicken in the north later on, sunny spells further south, and then some showery rain by Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Still to come on today's programme, as more than half of Britons say they're being forced to change their lifestyles in order to cope with the rising costs of living. We'll be live in Nottingham with one local butcher who tells us how he's really felt the impact. That's at around 6:45 this morning.
That's a skill and a half.
What's that?
Being
a butcher. Yeah, but it's also a bit of a luxury, I always feel. I go to the butcher's when it's a big event or a party, but it's expensive. So I can see why people are possibly thinking twice.
But it is a skill, and it is, you get things done properly and right and whatever. But there you go. Coming up in the next hour, Angela Rayner and the Sexham riot rumbles on. We're going to be asking the Labour Party about this thing with the Daily Mail refusing to meet with House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle and all of this, talking about that 7:30.
And remember, as always, we want to hear from you throughout today's programme. Tweet us at GB News, or you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now we're going to talk about recycling, and is it worth it? How much time do you spend sorting it all out and washing? That's the bit I object to, the bit of wasting water. Water's a very precious commodity. Why can't they do this? Why do you have to wash everything as well? So, according to a union in Scotland, it might not matter what you actually do.
Yes, the GMB union have claimed that household recycling in Glasgow is being buried at landfill instead of being properly processed. It's outrageous, I think. The public aren't aware of this practice, and our Scotland reporter, David Donaldson, has been rooting around on it for us.
This is the recycling centre in Glasgow, which handles 25,000 tonnes of rubbish a year. It's one of a kind in Scotland and is used to separate materials prior to processing. But Chris Mitchell, GMB union convener for landfill and refuse, claims that some of the rubbish being sent to Blockhairn is ending up in landfill.
But all of a sudden we find ourselves in a position where we've just been told that the green waste and the food waste has been dumped in its droves into landfill. And I'm absolutely shocked at that. I'm actually shocked because us as workers were told to go out and encourage the public to recycle, about the importance of recycling for the environment and for climate change. And the council have plastered it all over the papers. They put it out into different organisations, television programmes and everything else. You see it on the news. And all of a sudden we find out that the recycling plant in Blockhairn can't cope with the amount of rubbish that's coming in because of the free weekly bin collections is causing chaos. And now we find out they're dumping it in landfill. Dumping it in landfill, that's the most fundamental thing that recycling can't. You just cannot dump stuff in landfill because it's an environmental catastrophe.
Nobody from Glasgow City Council was available for interview, but they did release this statement. The contractor we use to compost mixed food and garden waste is currently unable to receive the usual quantities of waste as the contractor is currently refurbishing its own facilities. However, food and garden waste that we have received recently has been significantly contaminated with other forms of waste, such as plastic bags, which means it would be rejected by the processor in any case. Unfortunately, when contaminated food and garden waste cannot be recycled, then it goes to landfill, and that is what has happened in this case. The situation is also compounded by the poor level of recycling by residents in Glasgow. However, not all of the waste is buried in the ground. Some of it's converted into gas at this renewable centre in the city and used to power thousands of homes. But the GMB say the lack of transparency regarding what happens to recycling is a major issue.
They're saying they don't have the infrastructure. Or don't have the ability to transport it where it should be going. But don't tell lies then. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Again, it's the lack of investment within that service as well. You cannot cut your way out of a crisis. As I said, I'll say it before, they're claiming they're the greener city, a cleaner, greener, safer city. How does that look when you're taking stuff out? People are going out their way to recycle, taking their busy time to recycle, and they're finding out it's going to landfill. It's absolutely shameful.
Glasgow City Council say they're currently developing plans that will lead to a significant increase in the capacity of the recycling facilities. David Donaldson, GB News.
Well, thanks for that. And that man, to expect authority to tell the truth. My father used to say, tell the truth and shame the devil. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I've always thought this about recycling. My friend Anthea Turner went to do a programme where she was in a recycling facility. And she said, actually, they just cannot recycle anything that is in any way contaminated. So there's food on it or whatever. But I have this issue. Why bother when water is such a commodity? Why are we wasting water?
Well, I think it's more of a worry what plastic's doing than the shortage of water. But, I mean, it only takes 2 seconds to rinse out your yogurt.
We have 3 days of sunshine in southeast England and they're all, you know, they're on taps and whatever. I just think the whole thing, I think that man is absolutely right. They all tell lies about it. We're all expected. How many of you will do the right thing? And then there'll be a load of people who couldn't care less. And it seems to be the people who couldn't care less are being proved right because that plastic is going into recycle.
Well, don't let it discourage people. We should continue. We just need to speak up and make sure we expose it and sort it out. Got to keep on top of it.
Such a goody two-shoes. You really are.
No, what do you think it's just an excuse to give up on your recycling?
No, I don't think it's an excuse to give up, but I agree with that man who was speaking there. Just tell the truth. Now, for instance, where you and I live, I use that road, the A3, which will lead down to Portsmouth, Southampton, whatever. And it's full of lorries that have got waste that just blow off the back, all down the A3. So while they're driving to Portsmouth to put it on a ferry, to send all your waste to China, I mean, how is that economically friendly or environmentally friendly? And it just blows everywhere. Litter is an absolute scourge. The way that we're allowed to produce plastic, it's not our fault we use plastic, it's their fault that they make plastic, and it's the government's fault that they allow it to happen. The average person bins more than 7,000 single-use items a year, right? 7,000 in your house, and in my house, that's 14,000, but they're all allowed to be made. Why allow them to be made in the first place?
11 million nappies go to landfill every day in this country.
Well, I remember the days that,
Terry Towlow.
Yeah. You know, that's what...
Look, there's a happy medium. I did actually do a little bit of a trial of reusable nappies for a TV programme. They were fine. The modern ones are amazing because I won't go into the details, but it is an alternative, and we have to use 11 million nappies a day.
Yeah.
What are we doing to the planet?
Well, I'm fed up being lectured as to what to do for the planet. Actions speak louder than words. Tell the truth, as that man said. And what they should say is, everybody's making plastic, single-use, whatever. You've got 3 years to sort it out, come up with alternatives, and then we'll take over from there. I mean, and I said this last week, and a lot of you got in touch and said, oh, well, I've got, like, monitors that are plastic for my health, for my diabetes, whatever, and I need injections, and I need this. They'll find alternatives.
Yeah.
Just tell them to find alternatives. We're not suggesting you don't get your injections or anything changes. Give them a notice period. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, then it all changes. Anyway, those are our views, the views of our newspaper correspondents today and reviewers, David Miller and Claire Muldoon, right after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very nice to see you again. Eamonn and Isabel here on GB Breakfast News. Here's what you're waking up to.
The Foreign Secretary will urge the West to increase defence spending and supply tanks and warplanes to Kyiv. In a speech tonight, Liz Truss will tell allies to prepare for the long haul to ensure Russia's defeat in Ukraine.
A man arrested on suspicion of the kidnap of Katie Kenyon has been further arrested on suspicion of her murder. Lancashire police say although Katie has not yet been found, they are now working on the basis that she is no longer alive.
The Prime Minister is considering ways to help parents struggling with childcare costs due to the soaring cost of living crisis. Ministers are looking at increasing the number of children each nursery staff member can care for, with new plans to be signed off in the coming weeks.
So that's a perfect example of what he was talking about yesterday, which is come up with innovative ways, but don't spend any extra money.
Yeah. The MOT stuff as well.
So the idea is that you lessen the risk factor involved in kids. It's not going to cost anybody anything, but...
well, it might increase the risk factor if they're increasing the
that's what I'm
ratio.
saying to you.
Sorry,
Yes.
right, I see
That's
what you mean.
my point. What part of that do you not understand?
When you said lessen the risk factor, that's the bit.
Aggressive masculinity here.
Anyway, so, OK, what I meant was that you would increase the risk factor, I suppose.
Right, I got you.
But, you know, if the rules were needed, they were needed. If they're not needed, they're not needed.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
you know.
Would I be happy to have my little ones with fewer people looking after them? Possibly not. But if it saves you money...
I'd look after your little ones.
Well.
I would.
You're welcome anytime.
Former Tory MP David Miller is very welcome. He's always welcome here, together with broadcaster Claire Muldoon.
Also very welcome here.
Also very welcome.
And much loved and appreciated.
People think, after last week, people think I hate you. She's my mate, so she is.
Well, people maybe not understand our history. We go back a long way, Eamonn.
Yeah. And they have to disguise it in public, you know.
Yes, you do have to disguise it in public. I have to be more formal with you. I think that's the way it is. Claire, we are going to start with you, and we are going to start with this Angela Rayner situation. Yep. And we've got this situation where the Daily Mail today has come out. They say, we're not going to see Lindsay Hoyle, we're not going to see the Speaker, we're not going to be called to the Headmaster's office. And Angela Rayner did laugh and did joke about comparisons with Sharon Stone. They seem to be very confident on this.
And I think they've got right to be confident in what they're saying, and I don't think they should be in front of Lindsay Hoyle. I don't think, should have got involved in the freedom of press anyway. That's another issue. However, this issue is a major issue. I didn't like the article in the Daily Mail about Angela Rayner. I felt it was a tad misogynistic. It really didn't have to be written. But however, you need to look at the flip side. Angela Rayner has now been quoted as saying, a night she joshed on stage with comic over that moment, that meme, the time that it actually happened. She said, yeah, I think there's a little bit of that going on. It's like being, it's like you can't beat a puppy. You know, if you can't beat them, smooch them. I do think that Angela Rayner knew exactly what she is doing. She is definitely using her femininity to be herself. You know, she's a woman. She's had a lot of back history. She carries a lot of baggage, but I do think she sometimes lets herself down. And I think that as a role model, her socio-economic diversity is exactly what the House of Parliament need at the moment. We need to clear away the Etonians. We need to clear away what do you call them? People who have gone into politics not for the love of politics, not because they want to help. Career politicians. You know, try and let's stop all of that. Try and let's get more people like Angela Rayner from her socio-economic backgrounds in, because without that, we will never change. We need to come more centrist and we need to help people. But she is not helping herself and she's not helping women.
She has denied that she did any of this, hasn't she? And she said, look, what am I accused of? Wearing a skirt and crossing and uncrossing my legs, you know, wearing clothes and being a woman. She would deny it. But the risk, I suppose, in the debate that sprung out of this all is that it will deter women, won't it, from coming into politics and facing this kind of...
And speaking up for Tory, state-educated, Etonian-type speaking persons like me, OK? I want to say that, I mean, Angela Rayner has a coarse-grained appeal, doesn't she? She is as she is. And I personally think she adds to the gaiety of nations and everybody should approve of her. I think this is where the whole thing has gone hopelessly wrong is, you know, I'm a fan of the Hoyle tribe. Doug Hoyle, who's still alive, long-serving Labour MP, very old now, he was a good friend of mine. I've always had a lot of time for Lindsay. I've always thought Lindsay, compared to the previous speaker, was a pillar of common sense. So what the hell, Lindsay, are you doing getting involved in this shit show? You know, what's he doing, you know?
I'm not sure allowed to say that at this hour in the morning, David, so I have to apologise for that. But no, a lot of people
getting involved in this dismal parliamentary farce.
Okay. There you go, much more eloquent. OK, well, I think enough said on that. Do you agree? Should we move on?
Order. Now, we are going to tax collection, right? So this is in the Daily Telegraph. This is front page of the Telegraph, and this is about Rishi Sunak.
Yes.
Pressures on him to, come on, cut the tax.
Well, I mean, the trouble with this government, I mean, how long have you got? But the trouble with this government is they have no concept of how a proper Conservative government deals with a problem where you actually have mounting interest rates, mounting interest charges on debt. Allegedly, the debt will now be the cost of servicing the debt, i.e. not providing any public good, but just paying the bankers off 80 billion a year. And the trouble with Boris is that he is a spend, spend, spend man. And, you know, he is not really a Conservative in terms of his economic thinking, insofar as economic thinking is what he does. And I think the problem is they are desperate for money. This idea that Sunak is receiving in more tax, well, he would hope he would after the catastrophe we've been through in the last 2 years. But the idea that can all be collared and to throw money at all manner of problems. You know, I keep saying, but it's maybe worth repeating, if throwing money at problems had been the answer to Britain's political woes, there'd be statues to Dennis Healey and Harold Wilson in every village in the country, but there isn't. But there isn't. And, you know, there's also in the papers, and I will source it for the next time we're on, there is an account of people taking all those COVID loans that they were throwing out of the country in all kinds of dodgy ways. I mean, this became a bonanza of public money, which you and me, or rather, I look at my 4-year-old granddaughter last weekend and thought, come on, babe, we're going to be paying for all of this. I hope you're up for it.
So, in short, you're not up for Sunak to be cutting any form of taxes, whether it be income tax or national insurance or VAT?
I'm not saying that he shouldn't do that, because it's part of proper Conservative economic policy to do that. But what you can't do is, you know, these idiots, these distinguished Conservative parliamentarians, they read in the papers, oh, he's got 6 billion more. And that very afternoon, they go down to Parliament and say, yeah, let's have that. We want that. We got fancy schemes. We want that. Whereas, of course, you know, economic policy should be formulated in a long-term basis, and every once or twice a year a statement should be made about the future. But these people panicking, grasping for every billion here and billion there, it's not proper economic policy.
Do you think we're going to see a summer statement, though, in response to a lot of this?
Quite likely.
Yeah, and a bit of a
Quite likely.
But we're not facing a cost of living budget coming up as well. They're not going to introduce ways that the government are going to help with the cost of living crisis that some people in this country are experiencing at the moment.
I think most people are experiencing in some way.
And quantitative easing isn't the answer either, because that just makes the rich richer.
You know, but
and it's only asset rich.
You must look at your own. I mean, you must look at your own budget coming in, and it's pretty much fixed. Right?
Well,
costs are going up.
Costs are going up, but my income is, because I'm freelance, is up and down, up and down, up and down. But that's just the way of the world.
The revenue will not say you're freelance. They'll get you under IR35, and then they'll steal more money from you. And that's for all this talk of cost cutting. There's all this retrospective tax.
Yes, and I think furlough is part of that retrospective tax, because it has to be paid back by some form or other.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Madeleine McCann, Claire, on the front of The Sun. And I'm just reading the headline here, I'm a bit confused. The German police saying they have no alibi for the Maddie suspect. That's a good thing, right?
Well, not really, because next Tuesday, can you believe it's the 15-year anniversary of the abduction of Madeleine McCann?
15 years.
Yeah, from Praia de Luz. Police say Madeleine McCann suspect Christian Bruckner, who is a convicted rapist serving time at the moment in a German prison, has got no alibi at all for the night that Madeleine disappeared. And the Portuguese police have now come out and said that he is an official aguido. Do you remember those terms 15 years ago? Aguido is the Portuguese police term for a person of interest. We call them suspects, but they don't. Christian Bruckner has actually given access to himself in a TV documentary, a US TV documentary, and basically he has no alibi for the night he was abducted. People are saying he's playing games with us. There's a van linked to his subject. Is the suspect that was cited at the time of Madeleine's abduction. The German police can't do anything. The US police are, well, obviously they're not even involved. But the British police now, what's happening? It's just an absolute anathema.
But at the end of the day, you catch someone like Bruckner, if it was him, by getting the evidence the moment that it happens or the moment after it happens.
Do you think the Portuguese police were too late in gathering that evidence?
Look, as far as they were concerned, the parents were to blame. And I think that they worked on the assumption that the child had been murdered by her parents. A disgraceful slur, but that's what they... But, of course, once a trail grows cold, you know, you don't have to watch too many crime series, you know, on the television to know. The one thing they usually get right is that there's a crime scene. If you don't protect the crime scene and if you don't gather the evidence from the crime scene and act upon it very speedily, and the police in whatever many countries we bring in, even if we get the police from outer space, they can't magic up. Exactly.
Now, let's talk about the Church of England, David. Right, this is front page of the Daily Telegraph here. And you've got Justin Welby, the head of the Church of England. Now, he's saying, look, we shouldn't just sit by and say nothing. We shouldn't be a passive observer of migration policy. Now, you would get people who would say, David, that is what a church is there for. A church is there to give moral guidance, to provide the moral compass that you politicians clearly don't have or are not interested in.
Well, I spent the whole of my life trying to get my own back for having to spend 10 years in a church choir when I was involved. So this process continues into great old age. Now, let me just say, I've nothing against bishops having political opinions, but I think that they have to understand that if they descend into the arena, you know, with the likes of me, although I'm no longer there, thank God.
Who did you thank there?
God, there it is.
There's the irony. There's the irony.
I'm speaking up for God because I actually wonder whether, you know, I mean, I could be, I've a religious sense. Maybe I'd make a better bishop than some of these guys. The problem is, Bishop Welby, who I think is a largely ineffectual person, finds it a lot easier to talk about politics than he does about religion. You know, I'm still waiting 2 years into this pandemic for an explanation of what was God's purpose in inflicting this pandemic upon us. You know, and I think that also the problem for the Church of England, there was a time when England trembled at the thought of what the Archbishop of Canterbury might say, because most people were active Christians a century ago or whatever, or claimed that they were. Now, where the... I mean, I love churches.
I want to speak to an active
Well,
Christian.
exactly. Come on, Claire.
Right.
What do you want me to say? COVID is not a God thing. God didn't send COVID. The Chinese sent COVID. David, you know, whilst I get what you're saying about Justin Welby, I think that the churches... I was part of the synodal pathway for Westminster Diocese. I was my parish representative, and I helped with the parish priest, and we gave talks in the church and asked people to come and tell us how they felt the church had helped them and guided them through the pandemic. It was ineffectual because the churches were closed. Now, the churches, in my view, ought not to have been closed because there was protocols involved that enabled people to worship freely, safely, and that was the most important thing. I don't agree that church and politics should be involved. I think the church is there to morally guide, spiritually and morally, and educate us. And that's the way that I take it. But also, you know, just to finish on this subject, but, you know, is there a sense that society, the moral compass has been lost? And if we don't want our archbishops to speak up, then what will become of all of us?
What will become of us? But you're right about moral compass.
We've got to go and
I'll get on the naughty step.
The thing is, were you any good in that choir?
Actually, I had a very nice little voice. I did.
Which choir was that for?
In Wareham, in Dorset.
Lovely.
Well, we turned out a full choir, 24 voices. It was
very sweet.
Big stuff.
Well,
but there were moments when I resented being there. Never mind.
Thank you. Both of you, please go in peace to love and serve the Lord. And be back in 40 minutes' time. OK, your views on... Has the church got an active role in guiding you, in guiding society, or not?
Let us know. Now, more than half of the country say they have been forced to change their lifestyle just to cover the cost of essentials like food and medicine. That's amidst this rising prices crisis we are talking about this morning.
So, according to data from consumer experts, which 6 out of 10 people cut back on shopping, they took out loans, they sell their possessions as well, just to get by. Now, for more on this, let's go to Will Hollis, who joins us from a butcher's in Eastwood in Nottinghamshire. Tell us more, Will. Good morning to you.
Good morning, both. Yes, we always hear about it, maybe cut the costs, maybe save a little bit of money here, but this figures 6 out of 10 people having to really scrimp and save so that they can just get essentials, just get by with their weekly shop with the things that they really do need. You also heard there that people are changing the way that they're shopping for groceries, but also taking out loans. 1 in 10 people are borrowing money from their family. Also, in the little bit of the title there, you also heard that £271 is the additional cost in the amount of funding that people need just to buy the essentials for food shopping in a year. Of course, it's not just supermarkets that sell you food, it's not just supermarkets that sell your essentials. Many people still shop on the high street in places like Eastwood. Many people still go to their local butchers, and here at Watson's Family Butchers, Sam, you're the butcher here for local people in Eastwood. People are coming in, they're buying their cuts of meat, but what are they saying to you about the cost of living crisis?
Yeah. Like you say, everyone's feeling the pinch with gas prices and energy prices and generally everything on the up. So yeah, people more than ever are starting to come in and ask for the bare essentials. So, you know, things that any family would eat any given day. So things like mince and bacon and chicken fillets and things like that. So yeah, you're starting to notice it, but still there is very much a market for steak and the more luxury items as well.
Before we were going through a few of the different things, you've got a lot of different items back here. A lot of them that I might not necessarily know in terms of traditional cuts of meat. What might people be able to get that is maybe a bit of a better deal than if they went to the supermarket and just saw the regular cuts of meat?
Yeah, so there is literally many different types of cuts of meat, and some, you know, will save you some money. Things, delicious things like oxtail, I eat quite regularly. I love it. It's really delicious. And it'll save you quite a bit of money. But I understand as well the appeal. You know, it's very hard to plate up a nice picture for Instagram or Facebook, you know, a plate of oxtail. So, you know, I don't know if there's a bit of social status involved in that as well. But certainly there are a lot of things that if you just talk to your butcher and ask for them, then yeah, he'll guide you in the right direction.
But it's not just over-the-counter, people coming to buy stuff off of you. You're also having to make choices about the food that you buy. What are the different decisions that you're having to make, buying wholesale or from farmers?
Yeah, so traditionally we try and keep everything as local as we can. So if you can get it in and around Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire or somewhere like that. So the prices there aren't affected too much currently. Don't know how long that'll last for. But yeah, certainly you try and buy sensibly so that you can pass them savings on to the customers, certainly.
Sam, thanks so much for talking to us this morning. This obviously isn't an issue that's going away anywhere. There's always headlines about the cost of living crisis, and when they do come out, we'll strive to bring you them on GB News. But until now, back to you, Isabel and Eamonn in the studio.
But, Will, it is funny how people's tastes and what's acceptable to eat changes in different ways. We'll say goodbye to you two as I discuss this with Isabel. because, you know, as a child in the 60s, my father was a great man, and, you know, on a Saturday he used to go to the butcher's and he'd come back with things like a cow's heart or pig's feet. I'm telling you.
For the dog?
No, for us. Because that, I mean, our treat on a Saturday night was to eat pig's feet. Like, it was like a snack, basically. I know
Like
that
the
sounds
dog.
horrible. It sounds awful.
Oh, it sounds like awful.
Awful. Sounds awful. But awful was the thing. Tripe. You know, the
We
boiled
used to be
tripe.
served up tongue.
Tongue, yes.
On a Sunday, and I used to cry at the sun. This is my grandmother.
Yes.
And and it was literally like a tongue on my plate, and I would be like cutting.
It was a massive
through it,
tongue.
and it was really salty.
It was thick. And tongue was amazing. However, right, so people go, ooh, think of all that. You go to the fanciest restaurants anywhere, the fanciest restaurants.
It's all on the menu.
It's all on the menu. They'll serve pig's feet and they'll serve oxtail, as the butcher was talking about there. And, you know, I also...
Charge the earth for it as well.
They charge a fortune. I am often in a restaurant and I'll phone my mother and I'll say, Mum, you'll never guess what I'm eating. And she'll say, what? And I'll say, pig's feet. And she'll go, oh, that's lovely and that's gorgeous. I said, not at £45 a plate. And it's not. But, you know, pies and stews and mussels and shrimps and all sorts of things as well. Are you making a difference? Are you going back to that more... less desirable food?
Yeah, the stuff that you can stew and put in a casserole lasts longer and you can roll it out of an evening, but, you know, you can't beat a bacon sandwich or a sausage or...
Well, look, listen, we're going to talk more, obviously, about the cost of living throughout the programme. We're talking about it because it's important to you, OK? We're going to bring you the weather as well. We're going to be back top of the hour. Please stay with us.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Foreign Secretary calls for a doubling down in support for Ukraine as Russia threatens attacks on Western targets.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Thank you for your company. It is exactly 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 27th of April. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will use a speech in London today to call for sending heavy weapons tanks and aeroplanes to Ukraine, warning that if Putin wins, the world will never feel safe again.
Well, late last night, Russia cut gas supplies to Poland, calling the country unfriendly. It comes as the UK's main supplier of NHS ambulances stopped working on those to convert military vehicles into armoured ambulances.
Well, our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, will have all the details for us on that a little bit later on.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor is once again under pressure from Cabinet colleagues to tackle the cost of living crisis. New data reveals that 6 in 10 people have had to cut back on essentials, including food and medicine.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions. You can tweet us at GB News, or you can email us using gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And another thing I want to say, there's a lot of talk about other channels opening up and whenever in the news front. Did you not hear anything about it?
No, I haven't heard.
Well, what I'm going to say is, stop making us a little secret. If you're watching us, if you're enjoying us, tell your friends. We're on radio, we're on television, we're online, we're available out there. Our audience is growing. And we want to be the people's news channel. That's what we want to be.
Colin says, I'm definitely voting for your programme. You are the perfect news team and the people you invite in. I only watch you guys now. That's what we like to hear.
That's what we like to hear, absolutely like to hear. But go and tell your friends, tell your enemies as well, tell people you work with if you're heading to work
Spread
today.
the word.
Say, a good wee show on in the morning there with Isabel and that very handsome Irish bloke there. So it's trick.org.uk to cast your vote for us at the Trick Awards.
Thank you.
So, the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will tonight use a speech in London to warn that the fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance. She calls for an increased defence spending to turn the tide on that.
Well, she'll also say that Western countries should send heavy weapons, tanks and aeroplanes, and that they must be prepared for the long haul.
Now, all of this comes after Russia threatened strikes against Western targets in response to NATO supplying weapons to support the Ukrainian war effort.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the weapons would be a legitimate target for Russia's military.
Yesterday on this very programme, the Armed Forces Minister, we had James Heapy on, and he told us about what Britain was doing to support Ukraine.
We are sending, there's 14 armoured vehicles that have arrived, there's some precision missile systems, there's 1,000 medium-range anti-tank weapon systems, there's 4,000 night sights. So that's just another week in the work of the MOD. Some of that stuff we will have only decided to send last week and was ready available. Other stuff will have been weeks in gestation to get it ready to ship. Thereafter, obviously, there is a job of work to do with the Ukrainian armed forces to train them in how to use the systems effectively, and thus far that's been spectacularly successful.
Well, that was the Armed Forces Minister, James Heapy, speaking to us yesterday. Meanwhile, as tensions ratchet up, the Russian energy firm Gazprom has announced that it has suspended gas supplies to Poland after Putin issued an ultimatum that foreign buyers would have to pay in rubles.
Well, we've got in the studio former Army officer, that's Patrick Benham-Crosswell. Patrick, good to see you. Just looking ahead to what the Foreign Secretary has to say tonight, and she wants things ratcheted up. She wants more support for Ukraine, and she makes this point, which is things are hanging in the balance. I mean, you would have thought that, Russia is holding all the cards, but we've got to supply the hardware for this.
I think she's broadly right. I mean, the horrible reality is that if the Ukrainians lose once, they lose completely.
Meaning?
Well, meaning if they get outflanked, if they get destroyed, then all of a sudden there's no cohesive Ukrainian army anymore, and Putin gets to drive a victory parade all over the Ukraine. So the Ukrainians are in this awful place where they have to keep fighting, keep hard, get in touch with their Tyson Fury or whatever, and just keep on fighting and keep on fighting and keep on fighting, which is going to be a long haul. I think a lot of the Russian rhetoric is that as we're now sending them particularly powerful artillery, it changes the calculus slightly for the Russians, but in the Ukrainian advantage. The difference between the artillery we're sending them and the artillery they currently have is really very significant. A normal artillery piece might be able to put a shell within about 100, 200 metres away. with the 155 artillery, there are rounds that can make that within 4 or 5 metres of where it was aimed. And if that happens, then all of a sudden the artillery becomes a complete game changer.
And I presume that happens because there must be software attached to that which hones the missile in, which sounds to me as if it must take some sort of expert training. It's not just like
actually, it's largely automated because all the artillery is compatible with that ammunition. It's GPS guided. So we could dial in the grid and it flies itself there as opposed to dial in the grid.
Any of us could do that then? Any of us could set the...
Well, they're quite heavy. I mean, I fancy our chances. Bev's probably a little bit too slight to pick up 40, 50 kilogram shell and lob it in, but...
Okay, but I mean, for me, just alarm bells ringing left, right and centre. I mean, we're hearing from the horse's mouth yesterday, Putin giving this press conference, really stating that if there is incursion into Russian territory, if missiles have been fired by British equipment or indeed anywhere from NATO, then it would be an act of war from them, from NATO. This proxy war is happening. Are we creeping into the Third World War?
It's probably a diplomatic question more than a military one. I mean, we've had proxy wars with the former Soviet Union before. The difference, of course, this time is it's not. We're not dealing with a Russian proxy. We're dealing with Russia, and I can see that our support is without doubt making the Russian calculations change. So far, almost everything Mr. Putin or any of his minions have said on newspaper turns out not to be entirely true. He launched a war on Ukraine. He can't be surprised that occasionally something in Russia goes bang and he can jump up and down. But I don't think that the use of Western weaponry within Ukraine and a couple of strikes beyond the border is going to give him a casus belli. And if he did attack the West, how does that make conquering the Ukraine easier for him?
No. I mean, he can't win. At the moment, he hasn't shown any sign that, he's dominant in Ukraine. Why would he be dominant in a world war as well? When is somebody going to call his bluff? Would they call his bluff?
Well, I think we gently are. He expands, he's much about everything, and we took a deep breath, and then we said, well, actually, we are going to support Ukraine because... as the Ukrainians call it, your army's behaving like orcs. This is simply not on.
From a military perspective, I mean, Russia's saying that in response to all of these Western military being supplied, that they will potentially be attacking diplomats returning to Kyiv or any other Westerners in the country. Now, of course, we saw Antony Blinken this week. We've seen Boris Johnson during the Easter recess as well. How easy would it be to be able to target somebody like that? Presumably someone like Boris Johnson would be flanked by members of the SAS, wouldn't he, going in there?
Yeah, but if they strike with a drone or they strike from above, it wouldn't matter who's
So quite easy.
Yeah.
Well, Russian drones have a habit of getting shot down, as indeed do Ukrainian ones. I don't think it's easy. It's more about rhetoric. I mean, clearly, if you're a diplomat in a war zone, you're earning your pay particularly well. I think
what would be easy is to track all the heavy artillery that you're talking about. They've got to move that across land, and it's hardly a bashful sight.
No, indeed. I mean, you're talking about a convoy, a very large train or many long convoys, and we've already seen the Russians closing down the power supply to the railway to try and reduce the speed at which things can be delivered, and I think we're going to see more of that. What is also possible and perhaps slightly worrying is if a missile goes slightly rogue, it might go a little bit over the border and then it would land on NATO territory rather than that. But, that's the game we're in. If we're going to support someone in a war zone, then if you get close to that war zone, don't be surprised if the convoy you sent.
OK, Patrick Benham-Croswell, former army officer and military expert, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, a new survey has revealed that more than half of you say you have been forced to change your lifestyle just to cover the cost of essentials like food and medicine. Prices are going up, and people's earnings are not. Yesterday, the Chancellor faced renewed pressure to cut tax to tackle the cost of living. But what more should be done to help people? We're going to hear a real story from a painter and decorator, and that's Andy Mercer. And Andy, you're in trouble as a painter and decorator. There's always going to be work for guys like you, my friend. But how hard is it getting, and why is it getting hard for you?
Good morning. Yeah, it's getting hard in so many ways where it's a case of either paying for fuel or paying for your daily costs of living, from shopping to either clothing or, like in my base, it's with materials. And if the price of materials keep going up, it's going to be quite hard to sort of like keep my business going in that way.
Yeah, Andy, I can't see where you're talking to me from. It says live and something beginning with A. I can't read it. Where are you speaking to me from?
I'm speaking from Abergele in North Wales.
Good lad. Okay. And, you know, you tell a story that a lot of people will identify, and it doesn't matter what your trade is. I mean, if you're self-employed and you're going out there and you're like Andy and you're trying to make a living, how hard is it for you? Please do let us know, because he's telling us how hard it is for him. And Andy, the business, being a painter and decorator, your dad was one too. This is in the family. This has been handed down to you.
It is, yes. I originally started off in the farming industry, but as time went by, I could see that the farming side was getting a bit hard to sort of like get into. My father always said to get back onto the brushes. I did, and I think it was the best thing I did at that time. When he passed away, I just carried on from there. Went to college, got more into my sitting skills, and went to work for quite a few companies, but I decided I needed to go on my own and just enjoy my own, getting things done to the quality to what I wanted.
Yeah, you see, because if ever there was a trade or profession to go into, I would say, well, painting and decorating, it's like hairdressing or whatever. It's always going to be there. You know, being a barber, being a painter, or whatever it is, it's always going to be there. You feel really let down. You feel you just can't run your own business. You have become the working poor. What would you say to the government? Do you think they're in touch? Do they think they have any concept about what it needs? And do you feel they're doing anything for you?
I don't think they're in touch with us at all. You know, the only way to help to ease it a bit better for this is for them to take the tax off the fuel. That would help quite a lot, I think. And they need to stop taxing our foods. The way it's going, we're going to be really struggling. It's like they've dropped a penny in the pond, and it's just a strong ripple effect. It's taken a huge effect on everyone. And all I can say is the government really needs to start looking and listening to the people, rather than thinking, oh, that's okay, they won't mind if we put this up, put that up, we'll try and get the money back this way, whatever. It's the hitting is really hard, and it's some families are probably really struggling.
Andy,
really
you talk about the government. They don't care. They'll put prices up here, there. They'll put taxes up. But have you tried putting your prices up?
If I put my prices up, I'd lose my customers. You know, they're not going to be able to pay the price. But if I put my rates up, they're going to say, oh, we can't afford you. We're not going to use you. We're going to find somebody cheaper. And that's where things can go wrong for me.
You're in a situation now where the price of your what would you call it, your paint, your turpentine, everything that you need, your wallpaper, paste, whatever it happens to be, that all goes up. You feel you can't raise your prices. You're having to pay extra, like any tradesperson out and about in your car or your van. And you can't afford that as well. You can't add that on to the price. Everything is just spiralling upwards for you. So where are you at? Are you out of business now?
I'm not out of business, but I have considered sort of like quitting and just saying, I may as well go on the dole. I'm just struggling. I don't know where it's going to go from here. The more they keep prices up, the fuel prices going up, energy and costs going up, I'm going to struggle even more. If I put my prices up, people, like I said, people don't want to be paying out extortion rates for me to come in where they can say, well, that's like 1 day's payment could be for 2 days' work. And it's something I don't want to be doing.
Well, I can see it in your face, I can hear it in your voice, and you reflect what so many of our viewers and listeners are going through as well, Andy. And for you, I mean, the personal toll on this is you were thinking of getting married, you were thinking of having a ceremony and all that sort of thing. Will you be able to afford that?
Whether I like it or not, that's going ahead. The missus has said that is not on the... That's a no-talk area of cancelling it. That is happening.
Okay, well, good luck. Good luck with that. I mean, there's some good news on the horizon for you there as well. Andy, really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Thank you very much indeed, and good morning to you in North Wales.
And good morning to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go, Mrs. Mercer to be taking no nonsense. I like it very much indeed. Look, with the time at 7:16, we're going to take a look at the headlines now. And the UK has imported around £220 million worth of Russian oil since Putin started his invasion of Ukraine. Figures show almost 2 million barrels have been imported, despite the government saying it would ban Russian oil.
Food banks sent out more than 2.1 million parcels to families in the year to March. The Trussell Trust is warning of an accelerating food crisis as the cost of living continues to rise.
The editor of the Mail on Sunday has declined a request to meet the Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle to discuss the paper's recent report about Angela Rayner. Publishing his response, David Dillian said journalists must be free to report what they're told by MPs and should not take instruction from officials. We'll also be speaking to Andrew Percy, the consultant editor of the paper, just after 9 on this. Now, York City Council will meet today to decide whether or not Prince Andrew should be stripped of his honorary freedom of the city.
Well, the meeting follows calls made for the Prince to relinquish his Duke of York title in the wake of the sexual assault case brought against him, which has now been settled out of court and which he denies any responsibility or guilt for.
Well, let's get more on this and some other royal matters as well from the broadcaster and commentator Rafe Hadel-Mancu. I'm pleased to say joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is this significant? I mean, a freedom of the city, how important would that be to the Duke of York? And you know, how much of a blow if he were to lose the title?
Well, there's no greater honour a city can bestow than honorary freedom. And in the case of York, it's been held by some towering figures. Churchill, the Duke of Wellington, have all received this honour. So it's quite understandable, I think, that given the events of the past 2 years, it's, undoubtedly the case that he's bringing that title and that honour and the city into disrepute. He got it in 1987, a year after he received the title of Duke of York, and there's now also a call, of course, for him to lose his peerage title as Duke of York. Now, whilst it's very easy to get rid of the honorary freedom, it's going to be voted on by the council. Getting rid of a peerage title is a lot more difficult, and it's also being called for, I should say, by the City of Inverness, where he's also an earl.
OK, but at the end of the day, Her Majesty will have the ultimate decision on whether or not to strip him of his titles, and she's not going to watch.
Absolutely, actually, that's not the case. The Queen and the government can remove most honours. People will remember, perhaps, Fred Goodwin, who in 2012 lost his knighthood because of he was the head of the RBS and the bank almost collapsed, so that was stripped. But a peerage title is a different animal altogether. It requires an act of Parliament to remove it. The Queen can't do it herself, and the last time that was done was in 1917 during World War I with the Titles Deprivation Act, which was an act to remove dukedoms from German princes, obviously given the influence of the war on that. So, yes, I don't think there's any chance of the Dukedom of York going.
But whatever the legality or how easy or how hard, the message must be getting through to Andrew. You're a busted flush. You're not wanted here. Do you know, Rafe, do you happen to know, are people just shying away from him in general? I mean, he hasn't got an official role. Does he have any unofficial roles, or what is the circle? I mean, if any of us were invited now to some sort of function or association with him, I presume everyone would run a mile.
Yes, I mean, he has an inner coterie of friends, and they've been seen attending events with him on the Windsor estate where he still lives. But yes, he's persona non grata. He's been sent to Coventry by everybody, and he's lost all of his other honours and positions. So I think this honorary freedom is the last one.
I just wonder where it leaves him with somewhere like Royal Ascot coming up. Would he brazenly appear there?
Well, given the attempts he made to ensure that he had a prominent position at his father's memorial service, escorting his mother down the nave, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see him at Royal
Well, this
Ascot.
is the thing, when you talk about his inner coterie, and I suppose part of that is his mother. And we've been hearing, haven't we? We see Charles, we see William out working every day as working royals. Prince Andrew in the doldrums, not being able to go out and do that, but very close to his mother, filling his days, having tea with her, saying, "Mother, it would be nice if I could walk you down the aisle," and influencing her in a way that Charles and William can't because they're busy doing the work of the monarchy. So lots of speculation about whether he might maybe be able to wheedle his way into some of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations against the wishes of William and Charles.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we know that Prince William and Prince Charles were opposed to his predominant role in the memorial service, and I think it would be a disaster to have Prince Andrew, or indeed Harry and Meghan, actually, for that matter, on the balcony. This is supposed to be an occasion to celebrate the Queen's 70-year reigns, and all of the focus and attention would be on those three wayward royals.
Do you think that, under Prince Charles, as and when he does take the throne, any of this will be tolerated anymore, or do you think that he will essentially not excommunicate, but, just say to his son and to his brother, "I'm sorry, it's just got to stop"?
Yes, well, I think everyone knows full well that Prince Charles and Prince Andrew have had an estranged relationship for a long time, and it's really only the Queen that is keeping him within palace boundaries.
I'm just reading here, Rafe. 100 national treasures, 100 national treasures.
Are you one of them, Eamonn?
He is.
I have no idea. I got an invite for this, right? So I'm one of them, and I'm being offered to ride along in the pageant procession in an open-top bus that represents each decade of Her Majesty's reign.
Well,
I'm not sure where they're going to put me.
I wanted to ask.
Friday? Because you're busy on the Thursday. I'm using you. We're doing our show. You can't be off on a bus unless you're doing it for GB News.
What are we doing?
Well, we're covering it for the show, aren't we?
Oh, I'll be on the bus. I'll be on the bus. I'll wave to you.
You'll be there with Sir Cliff and Dame Shirley, so let's hope that,
Gary Lineker.
Well, I'm very honoured.
Read us a list of who are your fellow national treasures.
Oh, they're Paralympians. Alan Titchmarsh is there, right? Heston Blumenthal, the chef. James Martin as well. Gok Wan is on it. Shirley Bassey's going to be on it as well.
Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, so apparently there'll be 4 sections in this parade. So there's they'll represent Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So probably the Northern Ireland bus. There you are.
Speaking of stories in the papers today about royals, there was one about you today. Did you see that in the Mirror?
Oh, nice stop.
You and your favourite royal Camilla.
Prince Charles once raised concerns with Eamonn Holmes about the way the TV host hugs his wife, Camilla. He said, and this is a true story, he did say, should I be worried about the way you hug my wife? Because you're not allowed to touch.
And what did you reply?
She's my favourite royal.
Good crack.
She is my favourite. She's great crack.
She's absolutely superb. Anyone who's met her, actually, dispels all the myths people have about her. So down to earth. You can have a cheeky fag and a drink with her.
Yeah.
Which you couldn't do with most people.
Donald Trump said that this week as well. He was talking to the Queen and then he had to turn and talk to Camilla. He didn't know what to expect and he found her delightful company. Interesting and humorous as well.
There you go.
But, there we go.
All right, Rafe, thank you so much for coming in. Lovely to have you in our debut with us on the show. Rafe Hadel-Mancu, royal broadcaster and commentator.
So, Rafe, really busy sort of summer ahead for you then?
Absolutely. Non-stop going ahead. Let's just hope that we don't have another washout like we had 10 years ago for the Diamond Jubilee.
No,
if you can remember.
Yes.
So, and especially, let's hope it's not an open-top bus for you.
Oh, yes. No, you're right there. I got drenched that day as well.
The sun always comes out.
But, good luck to you. Hope we see lots more of you,
Thank you
in the run-up. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, stay with us. We've got lots more coming away, including the top sports stories. Novak Djokovic's return to Wimbledon. That's with Paul Coit in a moment.
Basil Brush is on the bus as well.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, the back pages are all talking about Manchester City. What a game. Champions League semi-final last night. 4-3 they edged it against Real Madrid.
It was an unbelievable game. It was just one of the greatest Champions League games that I've seen. Man City came out, first half an hour looked unbelievable. Score after 1 minute, second goal after 11. Then Real Madrid score, and the second half was just fantastic. I mean, the thing, they're going to rue their missed chances. Man City, they had so many chances. They could have been 5 up.
Well, the good thing about this is away goals don't count.
They don't count, yeah, absolutely.
As in, they don't count double. That's what I meant to say.
That's correct. But also, Manchester City should have scored more.
Yeah.
But one of the great things, we've probably spoken about the Panenka. You're familiar with the Panenka, aren't you, Izzy? The Panenka penalty, which is taken by a Czech player called Panenka back in the 76 Euros, where he walked up to the penalty and instead of hitting the ball hard, waited for the goalkeeper move, just little dink just into the back of the goal. So anyway, this is seen as...
arrogant, risky.
It is arrogant, it's risky, and when it goes wrong, it's unbelievably stupid when it goes wrong. But Karim Benzema, who is an unbelievable player, French striker, he's actually, I mean, he's been playing for a long time. He's only a year younger than Eamonn. He's been around for a while, hasn't he? He's 34, right, isn't it? Yeah. So he goes up. He already scored a goal, and then this is to go 3-4 down against Manchester City and semi-final of the Champions League, and goes and Panenka's the penalty in the back of the net. I mean, the nerve is unbelievable, but it was magnificent. A fantastic game.
Now, Liverpool nerves will be on edge because attention switches to them.
Yes, Villarreal.
In the other semi-final.
Yeah, that's tonight, so that's at Anfield. Both first legs for the English teams are at home. Yeah. You probably prefer to be away, I think, in the second leg, but... Villarreal, Unai Emery's looking after them, and it's almost like a bunch of Premier League misfits that play for them. But it's been incredibly successful. They won Europa League last year. So it ain't going to be that easy. I don't think Liverpool can have too much problem, but I believe that they will come through.
And it feels like yesterday we were talking about what was a huge story at the time, Novak Djokovic being harangued by border control in Australia, thrown out, not able to compete in the Australian Open. And it just shows how much the world has changed since then, Wimbledon taking a totally different approach.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that and thinking the way we felt about Novak Djokovic and what went on in Australia and the fact he shouldn't be allowed to play. I don't think anybody's going to even remember this by the time.
No.
Do you think so?
Well, he's still got the US Open to come, and you have to be vaccinated to get into America, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So he's not out of the woods yet.
He's not out of the woods, but I mean, as far as the crowds are concerned, I don't think that he's going to get a tough time. I think if Wimbledon was played straight after what happened in Australia, he'd been banned in the States. But I think he's going to go in, as well. Whether he's going to be a top seed, I don't know, because the thing is, his form hasn't been as great because he hasn't played quite so much. But he's been cleared to play because, with the laws of the nation, he can fly in unvaccinated, and Wimbledon have said, it's recommended that the players are vaccinated, but if they're not, they don't have to be, so he can come in and play scot-free. But is he going to get an easy ride from everybody? Is everybody going to look at him and
they're
think,
very polite at Wimbledon.
Yeah, it'll just be a round of applause. Oh, yeah, we remember, but we'll forgive you.
Yeah, we're there for the tennis, not for the politics.
Do you know anybody who we get tickets from? We get as an in.
I know.
To Wimbledon?
To people.
I'm taking you to Wimbledon.
What's your all talk? Look at the amount of places you promised to be taking me, and what have you come up with? What have you come up with?
I've got tickets
with
up
respect,
my sleeve, but
with
if you don't want to
respect,
come...
which usually means not as much as respect as should be. He knows where to come to for the tickets.
Emma Raducanu, she's in a divorce.
She ain't got any tickets. Not for tickets.
Yeah, tell us, her and her coach.
She's been having a shocker. These blisters, it's getting boring.
Yeah, I know. All the injuries. But the thing is, I wonder where this is coming from, because she's now looking for her fourth coach since the US Open. They all seem to last a couple of months. She's not doing as well. I don't know whether this comes from the father, whether this comes from the family, or whether it's her. Torben Beltz has been the latest one. We had Andrew Sears, who's Andy Murray's father-in-law, and there was Andrew Richards at the US Open. He didn't last very long either. Yeah. So Riccardo Piatti, Italian, looked after Djokovic for a while, Maria Sharapova, possibly.
Well, the main thing is, whoever's coaching her, she will be absolutely loved at Wimbledon.
Oh, yes, without doubt.
Yeah.
Without doubt.
Without doubt. And good luck to her, whoever she settles with as a coach. Paul, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
So after seeing that Will Smith movie, King Richard, I've got a new kind of understanding of the role of the father and the manager and coach and whatever else. Anyway, it's a great movie. We're going to take a quick break. Back with the papers. David Mellor, always a showstopper, and Claire Muldoon. Never any doom with Claire Muldoon. She'll be back in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, an email has flooded in this morning.
Elaine Parish has got in touch. So the breakfast programme is so interesting. It is serious, funny, informative, intellectual, with brilliant hosts.
Am I the
great
intellectual
guests.
bit?
I've not watched a second of the harsh Sky or the biased BBC at breakfast since discovering GB News. Not my views, the views of Elaine. Representing the British public. We love it. We love you. Great watching. Have never laughed at 6 o'clock in the morning watching the news before, ever before. So look.
Who's that from?
Elaine Parish, a relation of yours, yeah. That's David Mellor.
Elaine,
echoing.
don't keep that secret to yourself. Go out, tell your friends, spread the news, spread the word, spread the gospel. That's really what it is. We're going to bring you up to date now with the news situation. 25 to 8 is the time.
Yeah, the top story today, the Foreign Secretary is to urge the West to increase defence spending and to supply tanks and warplanes to Kyiv. In a speech tonight, Liz Truss will tell allies to prepare for the long haul to ensure Russia's defeat in Ukraine.
A man arrested on suspicion of the kidnap of Katie Kenyon has been further arrested on suspicion of her murder. Lancashire police say although Katie hasn't yet been found, they are now working on the assumption that she is no longer alive.
The Duchess of Cornwall is set to visit the National Theatre for the first time since taking over as a royal patron. Camilla was handed the role by the Queen last month after the Duchess of Sussex was stripped of the position.
I go through the newspapers the second time this morning in the company of the delightful Claire Muldoon and Mr. David Mellor, who's equally delightful and charming. And we're going to begin with you, David, and this is the Times, page 14 in here, and they have a story and analysis of Germany's contribution to the Ukrainian war.
Yes, and it's dismal because the Germans have really been up and down as to what they would or would not do. And even when they're willing to supply weaponry, they're not willing to supply the ammunition.
Really?
Yes, that's the latest on this. Whether they're unwilling to supply it or whether they actually don't have it is another matter. But yes, I've finally got myself to page 14. Trouble is the Times. One just looks at too many of these pages. Nervous Germany agrees to send anti-aircraft guns. And why are they nervous? It's pathetic, isn't it?
Why
what are they nervous
Why
about?
Are they nervous?
Well, allegedly they're nervous because years ago they took a decision that they wouldn't have nuclear power, which has bound them hand and foot into the possession of Putin. And at the end of the day, and I understand this, I'm not critical of them to that degree, they have got a heavy industries to run, and they can only run those heavy industries with a plentiful supply of cheap fuel. So what the Times are saying is that these cheetah vehicles, while they're primarily intended to be deployed for air defence, the guns can be trained on ground targets, which means it's possible to use them as short-range artillery pieces, and that's apparently what the Germans object to. It's ridiculous.
Sorry, yeah, as you say, you can completely understand why, but they've just got to man up and address the challenge that they're facing of the day. Claire, should we talk about this HRT shortage story that has been doing the rounds for a few days now? Sajid Javid yesterday saying he wanted pharmacists to
prescribe it.
Their judgment. Yeah, what are the Guardian saying about it today?
Now, I've got a personal interest in this as well, because 5 years ago I had an operation which meant I had to have the hormone replacement therapy, and I actually stopped. So the past 5 years I've been taking it personally. Now, when I started taking it, there was a crisis then in terms of supply. Then Brexit happened. Then there was another crisis in supply. So this crisis has been ongoing for a number of years, and it's always going. And it's not seemed to be stopping. But what women are doing mostly is actually sharing their prescriptions, and some are getting it online. which is on the dark web, which is actually quite disturbing. It must be resolved quickly because so many women are experiencing distress and some risking serious side effects. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think women need to, equip themselves better to deal with it. Women have lived without HRT for so many numbers of years, so it's actually made it better for us to manage our symptoms. However, times change, needs must are such at the moment that there is a grave supply chain issue. And although Sanjay Javid has said he is determined to resolve the crisis and intended to use lessons learned during the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, as well as appointing an HRT supply czar. I think that's a bit over the top.
OK, we're going to leave that there, Claire. We're just going to interject because we're joined now by the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, and that is Steve Reid. Mr Reid, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good to see you.
We're just looking at the front page of the Daily Mail today, and they're certainly not, their editor or reporters are not going in to see Sir Lindsay Hoyle. They're basically saying, no, they're standing by their story on Angela Rayner. What do you think of this whole situation?
What I think of this situation is I know it was seen through the experience of Angela Rayner here, but there's a problem with how women are treated in politics and how women are treated in public life more generally and in business as well. There's a strong strand of sexism and misogyny. That means women are treated in ways that men are not treated, and it can put women off from going into those careers. Now, we need women in politics. Politics cannot be the preserve of men, but I've seen myself that when there are contests going to select candidates in constituencies, many more men will put themselves forwards than women. The Labour Party set out a process for all women shortlists to try and equalise numbers in the House of Commons, and that's been successful, but still too many women are put off coming into politics. And the more that we kind of see the kind of sexism and misogyny that was directed at Angela Rayner, the more that will continue. So we have to call it out. We have to say it was the MPs that said it, that briefed it anonymously, I think, that were at fault here rather than the newspaper that reported it. It's just not acceptable. You cannot allow sexism to be directed at women, abuse to be directed at women in a way that puts them off getting involved in politics or business or other forms of public life.
Well, I mean, exactly, but you can't protect one freedom by infringing another, and it does seem like a huge overreach by the Speaker, doesn't it? And it kind of following then in the path a little bit of Burko, perhaps, and a lot of people are very disappointed with Lindsay Hoyle on this.
Well, I've got the greatest respect for the Speaker of the House of Commons, I have to say. I think it's entirely reasonable for him to wish to speak to members of the lobby, but then I fully accept that the media need to report what they're given. You know, to some extent, the problem here really was the anonymous Conservative MP who briefed this stuff. The Mail just reported it. So I think where we need to be focusing on is why are sexist views like that still tolerated in today's Conservative Party? They're the governing party of a country where slightly over half the population are female, and we cannot allow those kinds of views to be held at that level in our politics and our public life, or indeed our society.
What if the story is true, though? They're standing by this story very, very strongly, and they're saying that she did say things. She laughed and joked about the comparisons with Sharon Stone. So they believe in their story. What if it is true? It may be right, it may be wrong, it may be in terrible taste, it may be, misogynistic, whatever. But what if it's true?
Well, I don't know, Eamonn, any more than you do whether it's true or it's not true. What I do know is the case is that women are put off because of the sexism that is directed at them. If some women then try to make a joke of that as a way of dealing with it, well, that's a coping mechanism for them. But the key point here, surely, is that women should not be put off going into politics. It's very, very important that our politicians represent all of our society, all of our experience, the country. And the more that views like the ones that were given anonymously from a Conservative MP, we understand, to the newspaper about this, it's just unacceptable that any of them think that this is the way that you should behave towards women.
And we're going to bring a woman in to hear what she has to say. One of our newspaper contributors, Claire Muldoon, on this one. Claire, what would you say to Steve?
Good morning, Steve. It's a pleasure to see you here on GB News this morning.
Thanks, Claire.
Coming from a woman voter about to vote in the next elections, local elections coming up on the 5th of May, I'm actually quite, I'm astounded to hear you keep using the word women, because from the Labour Party's point of view, can you define a woman?
Oh my goodness me! Of course I know what a woman. Of course I know what a woman is. Why are you even asking that?
Because the Labour Party seems not to know what a woman is. Yvette Cooper and your leader, Keir Starmer, wasn't aware that he could define one. And I'm just interested to see what your view was.
Let me look, a man has a penis, a woman has a vagina. If that's not clear enough for you, then that's, I'm afraid, your issue and not my issue. But the point here is that women are being abused, targeted with sexism that is putting them off going into politics. And it's so important
but what role models do they have,
all
Steve?
of society is represented in our politics. Otherwise, the decisions we take are not the appropriate decisions for the country. We have to do what we can to stop the barriers that are stopping women getting involved.
Guys, I got to get involved here. Steve, I know you've other interviews lined up to do, but thank you very much indeed for your whole explanation and your views on all of that. Steve Reid is the Shadow Justice Secretary. Thank you for your time.
Good to see you, Eamonn. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's bring our panel back in, continue our paper review. Any thoughts, first of all, on his response? I mean, very clear, in stark contrast, as you pointed out, to other members of the Shadow Cabinet, and able to define a woman. I wonder if he'll get any blowback from that.
Blowback? Sorry.
Isabel.
Feedback.
It's a
Sorry,
phrase.
anyway.
No, but
David,
Shall we move on, ladies and gentlemen?
On that, though, I think for women to get into politics, we need role models, and I'm not sure Angela Rayner is the role model, dressing the way that she does. If she admits, and if the story is true, I don't think that is the thing that will get women into politics.
I know David would disagree with you on that, because it's a broad church, isn't it?
Of course, and while the worst advice you can ever give anyone is to be yourself, I think Angela Rayner has taken it, and she is what she is. But the idea that she's some shrinking violet is just ludicrous.
Yes.
I like Sarah Vine's take on this, of course, the ex-wife of Michael Gove. She says, if I were Angela, I'd own this. The truth is she could dress in sackcloth and ashes and still put Boris off his stride. And one suspects there might be some truth in that.
I wonder, is this more a class issue than a sex issue? On this as well. Your views are very welcome. Tweet us at GB News, or you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Should we talk about online safety? We spoke to a guest in the 6 o'clock hour, Claire, about this. It's on page 2.
No, we've done too much, Claire. We've got to do David now. He hasn't spoken, man. He hasn't spoken for 5 minutes.
Let's go to the PM under pressure, I thought. Telegraph, page 21. This is about the Tory infatuation for Boris is waning in the heart.
Anyway, after Mr. Reid, where am I? Oh, I'm here. Sorry, I'm in the studio. Forgive me. It is early, and a man of my age needs a bit of a snooze when provoked. OK, so what have we got? This business about Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is obviously brilliant, but he's also a weirdo. Do you remember that business where he sent a sort of midget submarine to try and get down into a cave to rescue these cavers? And when it was pointed out that this midget submarine was no use to man or beast, and when it was pointed out it was probably just a publicity thing.
It's supposed to be a rescue effort.
He attacked. The guy who was actually risking his life doing that, and called him a paedophile. So, I have to say, is Elon Musk the person with the sophistication of view to be allowed to run this thing? Opinions vary in the papers. I mean, Oliver Wright, the political policy editor of the Times, says Downing Street's told Elon Musk that Twitter must remain responsible under his ownership. And surely that's right. You cannot have this fellow coming in. I mean, what is free speech? Free speech is something is a god we all worship. But we cannot allow free speech if free speech provokes civil unrest.
Well, Elon Musk has actually released a statement, and he says his definition of free speech is, by free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law.
Well, so they're obviously...
he said, I am against censorship that goes beyond the law. So he's going to be regulated not only by us, by our online bill that the PM has said that has to go through the House, the European standards as well, and the Americans.
So I got to regulate you two again. Sorry, they're going to be back in 40 minutes' time. But thank you very much indeed. But we've got to move on because we've got a guest in Los Angeles here this morning.
Yes, we're talking about this defamation trial between Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard. It's continuing this week with the actors, well, just continuing their allegations being hurled across the courtroom of domestic abuse, psychological torture against one another. OK, well, let's go to Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield on this, who's there in Los Angeles. Kinsey, what do you make of the latest exchanges?
You know, if I were watching and didn't understand the background of the case, I would think that Johnny Depp was on trial for alcohol and drug abuse. You know, there's not been presented much evidence of any domestic violence yet. Amber Heard, there are a lot of secret tapes, yet we aren't seeing any or hearing any tapes of her actually being assaulted, just a lot of verbal and physical abuse. On the stand yesterday, Tara Lee Roberts, she took the stand. She's Johnny Depp's Bahamas property manager, and she witnessed some verbal abuse. I think we have a clip of that. Perhaps.
So let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of the exchanges. Let's see a clip.
As a result of the work that you performed, did you form any opinions with respect to Ms. Heard?
I did.
What were those opinions?
The results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
You know, when you look at this, Kinsey, what will happen to either of them? Will either of them emerge well from this? How will it affect them going forward, do you think?
Well, what's so shocking is, you know, Johnny Depp won his case against the Sun over in your neck of the woods. But over here, Johnny Depp is coming out really strong, and Americans seem to be siding with Johnny Depp. So I think that he is going to be the victor in the eyes of public perception. I think we're going to see him acting in movies again. This has really been humiliating for Amber Heard. And, you know, just the fact that Melania Makeup came out this week, and denied that Amber Heard could have utilized their makeup to cover up bruises by Johnny Depp. When in your life have you seen a major makeup brand, a major brand period, insert themselves in such a high-profile case, put their neck on the line, and, you know, within such a sensitive topic, to deny that the person that is accusing Johnny Depp of domestic violence could be using their makeup to cover up his bruises? You know, it's insane. It's so bizarre to see people coming out and defending Johnny Depp on such with such huge platforms. So I think that at the end of the day, Amber Heard might struggle to find work and might struggle to find her place in Hollywood, and people are going to be much more welcoming to Mr. Depp.
Kinsey, come on, she'll get a book out, she'll be on Oprah or she'll be on Ellen, and she'll make a fortune off the back of this, surely.
I mean, you've got a great... There are people that will continue to work with her and continue to allow her to tell her story, but I think Hollywood is really rallying around Johnny Depp. I think she'd have to go the tacky route. You know, is she going to be selling a blender at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, on a home shopping network? Perhaps. I really don't think she's going to be able to do these big blockbuster franchises that Johnny Depp said on the stand I helped her get.
And do you think it's fair? I mean, that might be the case and the court of public opinion might be shifting, but often we get the sense in the UK, in the States, money talks, money wins in these big trials. Whoever's got the most money can probably win. I don't know if that's true, but that's the perception that we have over here. And so we're automatically, I feel sort of, you know, it's a very British thing to sort of support the underdog. I feel bad for her if that is the case. So do you think that, you know, things are moving in Johnny Depp's favour fairly?
Do I think that they're fairly yes, because I think that she might be a manipulative person. If based on the content I've seen, based on the audio tapes I've heard, she's setting him up. The dialogue is setting him up, and she is trying to tell her story through some of these tapes when he has no idea he's being recorded. So, I think that this was a very toxic relationship. I think there's abuse on both sides. I think Johnny Depp just wanted people to know he wasn't the instigator, and that he, would never be a bully, be this aggressor. And honestly, the tapes show us that. Tara Lee Roberts on the stand yesterday was saying, I witnessed him running away. And in so many of the audio tapes, he's trying to flee and she's begging him not to go. So there's a lot of evidence of Johnny Depp trying to end the fights and trying to get away from her, and her instigating and creating additional drama.
Well, this is Amber Heard on the attack again from yesterday's proceedings. Let's have a look.
Them inside you could hear inside the house yelling, Amber yelling, and Johnny answering back, but you could really hear what was being said. We stood there for a couple minutes, CJ and myself, and then you started to hear, it became audible. Amber was telling him that he was a washed-up actor. He was going to die a fat, lonely old man. Then you heard, you hit me with a can. You heard Johnny say, you hit me with a can. And then he came down the steps, and Amber was behind him, and she had a bottle in her hand, was removed, and there was a brief pause, the moment, I think, of initial shock or uncertainty of why, that we were there. Neither Johnny nor Amber knew that we were there.
Yeah, no, that was Tara Lee Roberts. That was Tara Lee Roberts, and get this, it's 8 hours every day of that. And that jury, which is primarily men, by the way, because Amber's defense team was afraid that the women would swoon over Johnny. Imagine having to listen to all of that verbal vomit all day long, 8 hours a day, and deciding who is less awful. I mean, really, that's what this case is about.
Would you swoon over Johnny? I mean, he's a bit odd looking, isn't he?
I mean, not as much as I swoon over you, but I think he's still got some hunk left in him.
Is he an obvious pinup?
It's not my cup of tea, but I understand that he has been a pinup for many years. I mean, Edward Scissorhands is where everyone fell in love with him. That was the weirdest, and the pirate in.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, and I was not for me, but I can understand it. But it's box office over there. It's been broadcast, the whole thing in all its technicolor. Everybody watching it over there, as many are here as well.
Oh my goodness, when, you can log in every morning, it's like at 6 a.m. and there's 24,000 people watching on YouTube. And that's just one YouTube channel. And then the courthouses themselves are packed to the max. And sometimes when Johnny was testifying, there would be an eruption of laughter and the judge would threaten to kick people out because she didn't want them to encourage him. So there is a lot of hype and a lot of attention on this trial.
We're going to have more attention on you, Kinsey. You've dealt with that trial, and we've got all the other showbiz news at about 9:15 our time. So thank you very much indeed for staying up for us. We look forward to seeing you after 9. Thank you.
And we'll see you at home after this quick break, and we're going to bring you your forecast.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a chilly start out there this morning, but actually most places are dry, most places are bright, and it's a day of sunny spells for the vast majority. High pressure clearly dominating our weather at the moment. It's drifting in from the north, so we've still got a bit of a chilly easterly breeze around the southern flank of that high. But with high pressure in place, light winds, clear skies, and as a result, a touch of frost in places as we start the day. But soon enough, with the sunshine, it will start to feel more pleasant as temperatures rise. It's still going to be a bit colder along the east coast of Scotland and northern England, but with less cloud compared to yesterday, actually, it's going to be pleasant enough this afternoon. Highs in Newcastle and Hull of 9 to 10 Celsius, Cardiff, Southampton 14 degrees, Belfast 12 degrees. So those temperatures are a little lower compared to the last couple of days, but I think for many, with the sunny skies and the light winds, it's going to be a fine day. Still some cloud drifting around, as will be the case overnight. Parts of northern Scotland will see a few showers, and across central Scotland some patchy cloud, likewise across the Midlands and East Anglia. Now away from the cloud, with again light winds and cold air in place, a widespread frost is expected in sheltered parts of the country. But once again, despite the chill tomorrow morning, plenty of blue skies out there first thing. Still some cloud floating here and there, particularly for eastern and central parts of England, perhaps northern Scotland. But plenty of places will just see sunny spells and it will stay dry. 14 to 15 Celsius, southern England, South Wales, 10 to 12 for northern England, 13 there for Glasgow, 12 for Belfast. Into Saturday, well, it stays mostly dry and bright. The cloud will thicken in the north later on, sunny spells further south, and then some showery rain by Sunday.
Tonight on GB News, at 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Russia warns the UK that military sites could be targeted as a result of Britain's support for Ukraine.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme on radio and on television, and thank you for your company. The time just after 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 27th of April. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Russia's foreign ministry has suggested the Kremlin could bomb NATO sites in countries who've supported Ukraine, including the UK. It comes after the Armed Forces Minister James Heappey backed Ukrainian action within Russia.
All this comes as the UK's main supplier of ambulances suspends normal production to convert military vehicles into armoured ambulances. Our Home Affairs editor Mark White will have the details coming your way very shortly, and also the man who thought up the idea, who wasn't the Chancellor. But there he is, and he's once again under pressure from Cabinet colleagues to tackle the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, this is as new data reveals that 6 in 10 people have had to cut back on essentials like food and medicine to get by. Well, are you one of those people? If so, get in touch. We want to hear from you. The People's Channel. Get in touch in our discussions. You can do that through Twitter @GB News, or you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And we had a very sad story of a painter and decorator in North Wales, and he was telling us how he's in this awful conundrum, this awful situation whereby all his supply material costs are going up, but he can't put it on the bill because people just simply wouldn't book him, they wouldn't pay for that. And then he's also got a situation where he's got to get to his work, he's got to fill his van with fuel, and that's costing him more. He can't pass that on either. And all, it's a terrible situation because people they're cutting back as well, and they're saying, do we really need the living room decorated or not? Is that a saving that you can make? So look, you know the story out there. We'll try and reflect it the best way we can because we are here as, hopefully, the People's News Channel.
Yes, and whilst you're at it, if you've got time, we'd love it. You've got 2 more days to vote for us in the Trick Awards, the website for that, trick.org.uk. We'd so appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Russia has issued a warning that countries supporting Ukraine could be subjected to targeted strikes.
Yeah, it comes ahead of a speech by the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, in which she'll say the fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance, calling for increased defence spending to turn the tide. She'll also say that Western countries should send heavy weapons, tanks and aeroplanes, and that they must be prepared for the long haul.
Well, those Russian threats to strike Western targets are in response to NATO countries supplying those weapons to support the Ukrainian war effort. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the weapons would be a legitimate target for Russia's military.
Well, yesterday on this programme, the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, told us about exactly what the UK is doing in terms of sending supplies to Ukraine.
We are sending there's 14 armoured vehicles that have arrived. There's some precision missile systems. There's 1,000 medium-range anti-tank weapon systems. There's 4,000 night sights. So that's just another week in the work of the MOD. Some of that stuff we will have only decided to send last week and was ready available. Other stuff will have been weeks in gestation to get it ready to ship. Thereafter, obviously, there is a job of work to do with the Ukrainian armed forces to train them in how to use the systems effectively, and thus far, that's been spectacularly successful.
James Heappey there. Well, as tensions ratchet up, the Russian energy firm Gazprom's announced that it has suspended gas supplies to Poland after Putin issued an ultimatum that foreign buyers would have to pay in rubles. They've also shut it off to Bulgaria as well.
Well, in Britain, the country's main supplier of NHS ambulances has suspended normal production, instead carrying out the vital work of converting armoured vehicles into ambulances for use in the war.
Yeah, the Venari Group in East Yorkshire has already converted 50 former British military vehicles, with more on the way. Our security editor, Mark White, has this report.
Inside this vast facility, they're working flat out. A Yorkshire ambulance manufacturer now playing its part in the Ukrainian war effort. But these are no ordinary ambulances. They are specially converted former British military armoured vehicles, providing Ukrainian medics with far better protection in the conflict zone. The company, Venari, normally supplies the vast majority of UK ambulances. But all that's on hold as everyone here is desperate to help Ukraine.
Something that we've seen on this project, like no other, is that the guys are coming from the homes where they've been watching the news with the war unfolding. And for them and for myself and for all of us, it doesn't seem to be business at the minute. This is personal. And the guys are building with that personal edge to them. They're working through the break times. They're starting an hour earlier without clocking in. They're finishing later with, whilst clocking out before. We're all putting in over and above. It's nothing by comparison to what the Ukrainians are doing on a daily basis.
Less than a month after they started this process, the company has already converted around 50 armoured vehicles into ambulances. The first 15 have now been delivered, driven to the region by Venari staff and handed over to Ukrainian medics. The Ukrainian authorities tell us they've been losing around 15 ambulances a day in the conflict. So these specially designed armoured ambulances, better able to resist gunfire and explosions, have never been more urgently needed. At the very least, the Russians have been indiscriminate in their targeting. But many Ukrainians claim their medics have, in some instances, been deliberately targeted. Earlier this month, this former NHS ambulance was badly damaged by shell fire outside a hospital in southern Ukraine. The loss of ambulances has forced locals to use completely unsuitable vehicles to transport the injured.
An ambulance is a good piece of kit and it's designed to do its job, but take away that infrastructure, take away the safety and add in maybe sniper fire and maybe close-on explosions and the rugged terrain of a conflict zone, and you've now got the perfect vehicle to do that.
It was Conservative MP Andrew Percy, himself a volunteer paramedic, who came up with the idea of giving these ex-military vehicles a new lease of life.
They were all in their battle, army green with the cam webbing on it, the camouflage webbing, and they had the spent shells. So these vehicles have seen action in Afghanistan, surplus to requirements, and now being reprofiled in this way. And they are sadly needed. The fact that you need to have armoured ambulances is in itself a bit sad, really. And it speaks to the aggression with which the Russians are attacking Ukraine.
Every day, more of these ambulances roll out of this plant en route to Ukraine. Private donations and government grants should ensure dozens more are converted and sent off in the weeks ahead. Mark White, GB News, Goole in East Yorkshire.
Well, you saw him in Mark's film there, and we're delighted to say we can join him live, that MP, Andrew Percy, there, who came up with the whole idea of this. Andrew, first of all, I'd just like to say admiration and congratulations. You must be very happy with what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I mean, we're all really proud of what's happening. I mean, I can't claim credit for the idea. It was actually a Ukrainian-born British businessman who knows I work as a volunteer first responder in the ambulance service who asked me if we could find some ambulances for Ukraine. And it just so happens that we've got this brilliant factory in my constituency. So I reached out to them, met with the ambassador, and by all working together, we've been able to put this amazing project together. So it's been very much a joint effort.
But a huge effort nonetheless. And we're expecting this key speech from the Foreign Secretary tonight, talking about how we really need to dig in for the long haul. How long can these kinds of things, these kinds of voluntary and well-meaning operations be continued? Do you think that we'll be able to sustain this level of donation and ingenuity?
Well, look, you heard from Oliver, who heads up Venari, and some of the guys at the factory. They're all really proud to be doing this. They're happy to keep this going as long as... I mean, they've got their other NHS work to do. This is the factory that produces about 80% of the UK's NHS ambulances. But I think everyone's being moved equally by the scenes in Ukraine, and they recognise that, their need is greater than ours at the moment. So, look, for the time being, this factory is, more than happy to continue doing this. They've been pulling 24/7 shifts. They are the real heroes of this because, they've worked around the clock to take these vehicles, prototype them and get them into production in record time. And they want to carry on doing that because, sadly, as your report alluded to, it seems that the Russians have been, if not indiscriminate, possibly even deliberately targeting some of these assets. And, so we all want to carry on with this project because it's so needed.
And just finally, Andrew, tell us about that project. Just to be clear on this, is this voluntary? Is this paid for by the government? Is this part of our aid package to Ukraine?
Well, the government is procuring ambulances for Ukraine, but at the moment a different type of ambulance. So there will be other rounds of procurement, which we hope will go to these vehicles as well. At the moment, it's very much being funded by donations to the Ukrainian embassy, by a number of Ukrainian business people here in the UK. So, we're all really pleased with how it's gone up to now. And as I say, the company is doing this for no profit as well, which is really incredible of them. And, they are the real heroes of this because they have just worked around the clock, putting in, so many hours. And, we hope to secure some more funding and keep these rolling off because they are armoured or multi-casualty vehicles and are so needed.
Well done to you. Well done to Vanari, the company doing what they're doing, all the workers there as well in Yorkshire. And it's just a beautiful example of just doing the right thing. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Percy, MP. Thank you.
Now, the Earl and Countess of Wessex have been visiting various parts of the Caribbean as part of a tour of the globe by members of the royal family to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Well, the tour has been marred by protests. We're not exactly sure how big these protests are, but I think this will be you'll see it on all royal tours from here on, especially if it is to the West Indies as well. But there's accusations of the Earl of Wessex being disinterested in discussing the whole subject of reparation, but he can't really discuss it, can he?
Well, that's very difficult. Let's get more on this and the other big royal stories of the day. We're joined by our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Now, Prince Andrew really stepped up to the plate when he faced similar kinds of crises on his recent tour. Sorry, did I say Prince Andrew?
Yeah.
Prince William. Yeah, that would have been a shocker. No, Prince William really did step up to the plate. He altered his speech and was very widely well received. Is Prince Edward doing the same in response?
Well, Prince William did, as you said, but he stopped short of actually apologising for the monarchy's role in the historical slave trade, which he was criticised for. I think where Prince Edward was caught perhaps slightly short in this tour, he was talking to the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, and he urged him to use his diplomatic influence to kind of get support for reparations from the British government for the Caribbean. And Edward, I think he felt a bit awkward. He kind of laughed and joked about it, saying he had not been taking notes. But now, of course, he's been slammed for being disinterested from anti-monarchy groups. But he's in a bit of an awkward position, isn't he? Because the British monarchy cannot be seen to have opinions. It cannot be political. So I think he was put in a quite difficult position, as we saw with the Cambridges, with the Prime Minister of Jamaica as well, saying that they want to become a republic.
Let's talk about the Duke of York, shall we, seeing as I've mentioned Prince Andrew already. Yes. Talk about the freedom of the city perhaps being removed by the city. Big debate today about that.
Yes, so tonight I think councillors are going to be voting on whether or not to remove his freedom of the city. It was handed to him in 1987 for his exceptional service to the city. But following the fallout of his out-of-court settlement with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, who accused him of sexual assault when she was a teenager, which is denied completely by Prince Andrew, it always has done. They think there's too many, things in Prince Andrew's closet. And so the guy who kind of put forward this motion is a guy called Councillor Darryl Smalley, and he says that the next logical step is for both Buckingham Palace and the government to remove his Duke of York title. Now, that's a lot more difficult than removing his freedom of the city. It's not going to happen. It needs an act of Parliament. So, and we need to remember that Prince Andrew hasn't actually been proven to have done anything wrong, other than perhaps having some slightly dodgy friends. So I think it's very unlikely that the Duke of York title will be removed from him.
Shall we talk about Camilla? She's taking over today as patron or ambassador to the National Theatre, and this was previously a role held by Meghan.
Yes, it was. It's the first patron of Meghan's to be redistributed to another member of the royal family. I think Camilla's a fitting role for it. It's kind of showing that the Queen has got a lot of faith in Camilla for her future role as Queen Consort. That's, of course, is something which the Queen publicly declared during her Accession Day speech back in February. Camilla is an avid theatre-goer. She's got lots of existing patronages in performing arts, and she's expected to meet staff members and watch a short performance as well today. So
and Kate giving Anne a run for her money in one of the hardest-working royals titles. They're working together on a visit.
Yes, it's their first joint visit ever, actually. They're visiting the medical colleges working in maternity healthcare. So Anne is the patron of the Royal College of Midwives. Kate is the royal patron of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. That's a bit of a mouthful. But I think it suggests that Princess Anne is kind of supporting Kate as Kate does more and more royal duties. on her own without William as she becomes a more senior member of the royal family as she keeps going. And she's kind of learning from Princess Anne, who is a very hard-working member of the royal family. 387 public engagements she did in 2021, which is a lot compared to many of the other members of the royal family. So I think the Duchess of Cambridge today will certainly be taking notes from Princess Anne.
More than one a day. It's amazing.
Yes.
OK, Cameron, always lovely to have you on. Thank you.
8:17 is the time. Let's bring you up to date with the news. The UK has imported around £220 million worth of Russian oil since President Putin started the invasion of Ukraine. Figures show almost 2 million barrels have been imported, despite the government saying it would ban Russian oil.
Food banks sent out more than 2.1 million parcels to families in the year to March. The Trussell Trust is warning of an accelerating food crisis in the UK as the cost of living continues to rise.
The editor of the Mail on Sunday has declined a request to meet Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle to discuss the paper's recent report about Angela Rayner. Publishing his response, David Dillon said journalists must be free to report what they're told by MPs and should not take instruction from officials. Well, Boris Johnson and his cabinet continue to disagree about how to tackle the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, remains opposed to ministers reforming income tax and reiterated that there was no money for cost-cutting schemes.
Well, the Prime Minister is also expected to update Parliament at PMQs later today on supplying weapons and vehicles to Ukraine. Let's get the whole roundup from our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, what stands out for you?
Well, yes, yesterday Cabinet began with an extraordinary call from the Prime Minister, really, for his ministers to put forward their own suggestions to alleviate the cost of living crisis that so many people are facing in the country. Sort of a going round each department asking, what could you do? How could we alleviate the cost of living crisis? And there were many different suggestions. One of the big problems, though, is that, as we all know, there's very little money about. Mm-hmm. We've spent an enormous amount of money over the last 2 years, and the Chancellor is very keen to try and start paying down those debts. But that is a tricky thing to do, to mesh with that situation that people are facing right now in their lives. So there have been some suggestions that have been free, for example. Jacob Rees-Mogg suggesting that the UK takes off tariffs from items that we do not make here in Britain. Now, that's a Brexit freedom. We couldn't do that within the EU. We can do that outside the EU.
Department of Trade opposed to that, though.
Exactly. Anne-Marie Trevelyan's...
in all these trade deals. What's the point of Canada's trade deal if you then remove the tariffs?
Well, this is the argument. Now, some would say that a free trade agreement is much more than about tariffs. If it was only about tariffs, no one would mind the fact that the trade and cooperation agreement with the EU that we have, that is zero quota, zero tariff, there are still some frictions with trade there because of the regulatory differences. So modern trade deals are very much more about that regulatory difference, although clearly still about tariffs in some areas as well. So yes, a disagreement there between Jacob Rees-Mogg and Anne-Marie Trevelyan as being reported, but there are some other suggestions. One cabinet minister, for example, suggested loosening the ratio of childminders to children that we have, particularly for early years, which is a very tight ratio. I think it's about 1 to 3 for early years in this country, compared to the Nordic countries where it's much more generous. Now, that could cut the cost of childcare, which is a huge cost.
Here's an idea. Why are they tinkering around the edges? This is so annoying. Right, well, let's get suggestions, save money, but we're not going to spend any money here. They've got loads of pots. Any of us could walk in. I promise I could walk into the Treasury now and say, biff that, forget that. And one of the things that biff top of the list is the foreign aid budget. Why are we giving aid to people around the world when people here need it?
That's certainly a big argument. And of course, the government did cut the foreign aid budget a year ago because of the COVID pandemic. However, the uproar that created in the media, on the opposition benches, and indeed on the Tory benches as well.
It's not causing uproar. It's not causing uproar with people. I don't know where these cameras. One day we'll afford lights for cameras here. Camera 7. I bet you it's not causing uproar with you. It's not, people who are listening and watching at home, it's not causing uproar with them. It's causing uproar with every liberal elite person in London and whatever, and they're the ones who are listened to because they've got the political lobby. Just, try and explain to people, we're not reducing your fuel, we're not reducing your heating bills, we're not helping you with your food costs, but we are getting a band set up for young people in the middle of somewhere or other,
What was the other ideas that came up? The MOT suggestion that you could get your car MOT'd every other year. But the suggestion from the AA was this could be dangerous, that people wouldn't get repair work done that was necessary. I mean, rock and a hard place. Every suggestion they come out with, someone comes out with a criticism.
Yeah, because but what you're saying to people is every 2 years we'll save you 70 quid or something. What use is that to anybody? It's pathetic. If you want to go the whole hog, say, well, let's just forget doing MOTs. Let's forget charging you for your passport or your driving licence or whatever. It really is patronising beyond belief. It really, as you can see, it makes my blood boil.
Well, no, certainly. These are big debates that are happening around the Cabinet table and reportedly quite heated debates at Cabinet. Now, of course, Cabinet has to be private. We're not supposed to attribute what specific people said beyond the official readout, but clearly wide reports of big disagreement, not least between the argument on tax. Which is the Chancellor's big staple policy, I suppose, that he needs to be Mr. Fiscally Responsible. He needs to get that debt down. Well, other people around the Cabinet table really believe that the way to get the debt down, maybe not in the short term, but in the medium to long term, is to cut those taxes for ordinary people, grow the economy, and by that way reduce the debt to GDP ratio. That's a big disagreement.
Growing all the time. That's the shocking thing. I mean, in the long term, that might solve it, but in the short term, the debt's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and dwarfing the budgets that we spend, as we know, and we've talked about before with you, on education, on the NHS.
And certainly the other big thing that happened at Cabinet yesterday was, now we're hearing, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, is arguing for more defence spending. Now, in a more uncertain world, with a more aggressive Russia, with the big threats that we can clearly see on our own continent, that might be very wise and prudent, and certainly she is sort of joining forces with the Defence Secretary there. But also, that's asking for billions more to be spent on our armed forces. Where's that money coming from?
Quite provocatively received in Russia as well, and lots of discussion this morning about whether or not Western diplomats will be safe in Kyiv as a result of all of this kind of suggestion of sending more and more armaments to Ukraine. Look, so much politics to talk about with you, Tom. Thank you so much for always being so erudite and explaining it all.
Tom, of course, back with his own show 9:30 this morning.
The briefing.
Thank you for that. But look, if you got an idea how government could cut spending, not tinker around the edges, obliterate whole departments. What is the point of? Tell us, what is the point of this morning? You can tweet at GB News, you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, we are the People's Channel, and as and when we put some of those suggestions to government ministers. So send in your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Now, coming up, we're going to take a break. After that, we're going to talk about the number of hepatitis cases, particularly amongst the under fives. We'll be speaking to a doctor about exactly what is going on there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, we've been talking so far this week, here we are on Wednesday, about this hepatitis outbreak. And right across the world, health officials are investigating this. It's a worrying spike in cases, not too large here in Britain, but as you point out, Isabel, growing.
Well, yeah, I mean, they said in the last 3 weeks, more cases than they would expect in a whole year amongst children. So very alarming for parents. The UK Health Security Agency reporting the number of known cases among children under 10 has now risen to, I was reading, around 200, and those who've needed a liver transplant has increased to 10.
Well, joining us now, Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence, with all of this. And Dr. Spence, why is this happening? Let's just get into this. What is hepatitis? What does it do? How do you get it?
So hepatitis is just a fancy term for inflammation of the liver. So it's when your liver is a bit aggravated. Now, why is this happening? That's a really interesting question, and health officials still don't know the answer. So the exact cause is unknown, but it is under investigation. Now, the speculation is that it may be linked to a specific strain of adenovirus, which is just a common virus that's commonly seen in children, particularly in the under 5s. But it usually causes cold-like symptoms or vomiting and diarrhea. But in these cases, some children have gone on to develop signs and symptoms of hepatitis, so it's potentially linked to that.
OK, so look, the worrying thing, of course, in all of this is that the symptoms are very common. You know, for any parent, they'll know that if your child's got a tummy ache or if they've got a bit of diarrhea or vomiting, it's just a normal week in a household for an under 5s. And that's the problem. A lot of these cases are getting missed, really, until it gets much too serious. So what should parents be doing if they are at all worried?
Exactly. So as I mentioned, it may be triggered by a common cold. So symptoms of that, coryzal symptoms, or symptoms of gastroenteritis, vomiting and diarrhea. But when it leads to hepatitis, that has some more specific symptoms that I think parents and guardians should be alert for. So things like jaundice, which is yellowing of the skin, yellowing of the whites of the eyes, itching of the skin, tummy pain, particularly on the right-hand side, but also dark urine and pale-coloured stools. They're a little bit more specific for hepatitis.
Yeah. So once you get hepatitis, and I was saying, we'll get people saying today, well, there's only 200 cases of it in the country. What are we worried about this for? That suggests to me we're worried because it's obviously very, very serious once you get admitted to hospital. So what's the danger? What happens? What's the treatment?
So I think the concern is that, first of all, I want to say that most children who are developing hepatitis are recovering well, and it's self-limiting, and the treatment is supportive with monitoring and fluids and supportive treatments. But there has been a small number of cases that some children have required a liver transplant, and that's what the concern is. Now, parents can't do anything to prevent this, apart from the usual hygiene habits that we've picked up, particularly over the last couple of years, regular hand washing, respiratory hygiene, covering your mouth when you cough. And if your children is developing any signs of adenovirus, so diarrhea and vomiting, stay home from school or nursery for 48 hours until those symptoms have resolved. And if your child is developing any signs of hepatitis, to seek urgent medical attention.
I suppose the tragedy in all of this is these little ones are the least affected by COVID, affected, of course, by the lockdown restrictions, and now, as a consequence of that, suffering this horrible outcome. Can you have a long, healthy life if you have a liver transplant?
Absolutely. So many patients who undergo liver transplantation will live a normal, healthy life, probably with a little bit closer health monitoring. But like I mentioned, I just want to reiterate that most children who are getting this hepatitis are recovering normally without the need for a transplant. It's very small numbers.
Good to know, Doctor. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence there on the dangers of hepatitis and the increase of hepatitis cases. Thank you. We'll take a break there. We're going through the newspapers. We've got Claire Muldoon, David Miller right after this short break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, we're going to take a look at the papers again. One last look this morning with David Mellor and Claire Muldoon. Warm welcome back to both of you. Shall we start with the story that we touched on in the last hour, David, inside the Telegraph? And this is the discussion about Boris and his popularity. Of course, we've got elections next week. Big questions about whether or not he can hold on to his popularity in the heartlands.
Absolutely. My eye was caught by an article in the Telegraph by their columnist Tanya Gold, who's quite forthright in what she writes about everything. And what she says is this: I've been following Boris's campaign trail, and the Tory love affair with him is over. Now, this, you see, is quite serious. There comes a point in every showbiz character's career, and Boris is showbiz, as we know, where people no longer are warm to the persona. You know, and that's why you get all manner of change in the top of show business. People want to move on to another personality.
But there isn't another personality. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but, you know, you can sometimes say a break from having personalities is probably... I mean, the defence of the modern politician is you don't have to be very good at either politics or, you know, putting yourself across. It's just how they are.
Do you think these are sound bites handed out now ahead of the Sue Gray report that's going to be published, hopefully in its unredacted form, that the Tory party are starting to turn on Boris Johnson?
Yes, well, I think they are, because at the end of the day, what she goes through is the way that Boris campaigns and makes people laugh, and everyone thinks he's a great fellow. And there's no doubt it was a huge achievement, for instance, to be elected in a Labour town, London, twice as mayor, because his personality got across. But the problem for Boris now is his personality running in his favour? And I think everyone thought, a lot of Tories thought, because it was 2 years ago, these parties, somehow people will forget. But people will not forget their relatives dying, and they can't go and see them, while Boris and his clowns are drinking cheap wine in the gardens of Number 10.
You know, the Partygate is a minor infringement. They would point to the fact that he was very successful with the vaccine rollout. They've talked about the G7 growth last year being the fastest of all of the G7. They would point to the fact that we came out of lockdown before any other nation. A lot of people, his supporters, would say he's made lots of good decisions against a very difficult backdrop.
And, you know, to be fair, in my opportunities I get to bounce into this studio, I do make the point that what he's done in Ukraine is very good, far better than the European leader. But being objective about him, what Tanya Gold does is really take the typical Boris person in the street that he'll bounce over to and it'll be a great soundbite. These people are allergic to him now. And the question is, will that allergy cease? And if it ceases, bye-bye Boris.
Now, Claire, a private school founded by the slave trader Edward Colston is going to be renamed in time for the autumn term.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So, a private school founded by the slave trader Edward Colston, as you've just said. Colston School in Bristol was founded in 1710, and later this year, it's merged with another school, another local private school. It's going to be called the Collegiate School, we think. No name has been defined specifically yet on that. But my issue with this is it's deemed to change its name to make it more inclusive. And I looked up the school website before I came on. The school clearly wants to be representative of its surrounding area, as most schools are, even in the state or the private sector. How can it make it more inclusive by changing its name? Surely its name has led, it's not undersubscribed. They don't particularly need to get the pupils in by any form of marketing. I think this is PC. I think it doesn't have to happen, and I think it's wrong.
Where does it stop as well? In a city like Bristol, and I lived there for nearly a decade.
You went to university there.
Yeah, and I worked there for a long time afterwards as well. I mean, it's got White Ladies Road, Black Boy Hill, the Colston Tower. I mean, there's so many links to its history. All the architecture, much of it very beautiful, built on slave trade. I mean, much of London's architecture also funded in the same way. Just at what point do we say, this happened, it was terrible, we're so sorry for it, but let's just live with what we've got?
That's the thing that I don't get. The school are keeping the motto and they're keeping their crest. They're not changing anything other than the name.
Well, it's not just a name, it's his name.
Yes, but Eamonn...
It's his name. Does it really make a darn bit of difference if it's called the Collegiate or not?
No, but why go to change the name to make it more inclusive?
OK. Well, OK, give us your view on that one. David, we go to you. We talk about free speech, the Daily Mail, page 16, and it's about Elon Musk and his takeover of Twitter.
That's right. Elon Musk. There are attempts to defend Musk, and this is a feature article by Mick Hume saying no wonder the left are in uproar over Twitter's takeover. They think that free speech only applies to their views, and this is an attempt, to defend Musk. But the seriousness of what he faces, you can see from page 1 of the business news of the Telegraph. Musk vows to defend will of the people after EU attack. Because, of course, what they're saying is that he could be deprived of his ability to operate Twitter in the EU if it violates social media rules. And here, Mystic Mellor confidently predicts, Mystic Mellor doesn't get it wrong, Mystic Mellor. He confidently predicts that Musk is going to run into trouble. First of all, as we said, in the last hour, Musk is a funny guy, accusing a fellow who was critical of him putting a mini submarine into a totally unsuitable cave. He lashes out at him as being a paedophile. But also, Musk is obviously a brilliant man. He doesn't have to sit behind a desk like me doing newspaper reviews. He can make billions, doing that. And I admire him. I take my hat off if I had one to him. But he's running a Tesla. He's going to put people on the moon, and he's running a huge social media company. Come on, isn't there a moment when he will spread himself too thin? And when he does, I think it will be a real problem for him, because he cannot afford to get Twitter wrong. And free speech, it sounds wonderful. I believe in free speech. We all do, but there is some sort of speech that's too dangerous to be allowed to be free.
Interesting, shares in Tesla yesterday absolutely tanked, didn't they? It's a real worry for him.
Why would the shares in Tesla
They think that he's overpaid for Twitter and he's going to have to fund it through
Tesla.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, and there's something to do with China as well, doesn't he? He has to depend on a lot of bits and pieces. And
a lot of the bots from Twitter are manufactured.
Lithium is
it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
Right, the books. Now we go back to the Times here. Biff, Chip and Kipper books are pulped.
This is my life, Biff and Chip books. I hate them so much.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This is what children are taught with Biff and Chip books to read today.
So most days
Dick and Dora when I
was
sit at home.
Well, I managed to read without them.
Biff and
Why
Chip.
can't other people? I still try to read
Just
anyway.
about.
Yeah.
It's a very strange way they teach children to read now. Anyway, Claire, sorry, tell us the story.
Well, it is, but Biff, Chip and Kipper books have been pulped amid the fears of, believe it or not, Islamophobia. And there's one book in particular, The Blue Eye, which was amended in 2012. The premise of the story, and bear in mind these are nursery stroke reception stroke primary one in Scotland children. We're talking about ages 4 to 6, right? They're supposed to have been fears of Islamophobia because the characters in the books, Biff, Chip and Kipper, opened the book and they were sent away in a magic eye to a foreign destination in a marketplace with scary people. That could have been Glasgow Market. I'm sorry, it could be the Barrowlands in a
Yes, you don't need to travel far to find scary people.
Well, exactly. Have you walked outside these days? Some people say even if you need to walk in this panel for scary people. But come on, I don't think that, as Leonardo Duval, a teacher, tweeted, one page from a fictional story is hardly a case of indoctrination. That's the key. We need to credit children with more than we are and just let things just be as they are.
But I would say they're very politically correct, actually, the books that we get sent home. I don't know if it's my son's
Well, they're
school,
even
but
getting
they're
even
all,
more politically correct now.
Yeah, they're not...
But it's like there are people who sit there scouring every page of prints to find something that's remotely questionable and then lash out. And there's also, let's face it, we're all guilty of this, plenty of people in the media who are only too anxious to take it up, and suddenly things get blown out of all proportion.
Look out, they're going to be called the collegiate books going forward.
OK, front page of the Times, COVID fraud, David.
Well, I mean, this is terrible, actually, because what this shows is suitcases full of COVID loan cash seized at UK borders. This is money which was advanced to businessmen on the basis they needed a loan to help their business get through. And about £47 billion was paid out in loans as part of the scheme, which is estimated that as much as £17 billion, so that's a product of 6p on the income tax, just so we all know, 17 billion might never be paid back, with about 5 billion of that lost to fraud. I mean, come on, what was going on?
No. Well, it was a crisis. It was an emergency. That's what the government would say. Difficult decisions or bad decisions often made in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, I'm familiar, having been in government for 11 years. I'm familiar with bad decisions. But, you know, it was never expensive as that.
Food tariffs, another big decision that's being debated in the Cabinet. Obviously trying to find ways to cut the cost of living crisis, and some suggestion that they could cut tariffs on grocery bills, but it's not gone down very well with the Department of Trade.
No, it hasn't. The Department of Trade, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, International Trade Secretary, she's resisting the plan, arguing that the UK would be throwing away its leverage in trade negotiations with third countries if the tariffs were actually cut. Cabinet split, the headline is, over cutting food tariffs after grocery bills climbed 5.9% in a year. That transpires as about £271 per annum for the average household. A huge jump, a massive jump. But, you know, you just have to work your way around it, get less takeaways, do the whatever. But interestingly, Jacob Rees-Mogg is in favour of cutting the food tariffs in a way to help people. We were talking in the first segment about what the government will do, because we're now facing lots and lots of taxes being incurred with the new national insurance tax. Student loans is like 5.4% increase on loans as tax. The government is taking so much money in tax for goods and services. Is there anything that they can do to help? Perhaps this is one way.
You know, I talked about this cabinet meeting yesterday, and they're all saying, bring ideas to the tables, and some of the most ridiculous things, and it's just, you know, it's just trimming around the edges and whatever. Could you two, off the top of your head, I swear, I bet you I could walk into the Treasury and say, save 20 billion there, save 10 million there, do whatever. It must be obvious. Instead of this trimming and cutting and whatever, David, if it was in your remit, if it was in your power...
Well, I mean, I was at one point. And what is quite clear is the cost of the public sector has grown enormously. The number of civil servants has grown. A lot of them not even coming into the office now. And I think there has to be a real crackdown on the amount of money that's spent within a public sector that has never consumed more of national wealth than it does today.
Especially public sector pensions.
So what would you do then?
Well, I mean, you'd have to trim employment, and you would have also. Why should, when people have all the job security that they get as public servants, why should they also get incentives in terms of pensions that are unaffordable within the private sector?
Claire, what would you do?
I would try and help people out by cutting insurance, because I think insurance is a form of bribery, really. We don't need so many of them, especially car insurance and all these types of insurances.
That's a different type of cut. That's costing us money. So what we're trying to say is, what would you take away that would gain the Treasury money? Like, foreign aid budget or something?
Well, no, I would actually, the foreign aid budget, yes, but I'd look domestically at what they're spending at the moment on putting cycle lanes in, putting the money to local authorities.
Too late now, they're all there.
Tell me about it.
They're all there.
Tell me about it.
Guys, thanks very much indeed. We've got to go. Claire Muldoon, David Miller, they were your paper hosts today.
Mystic Miller.
Mystic
Miller. Renamed you. Never mind your 11
His mysticity, I expect to be referred to.
Thank you very much indeed.
His mysticity.
We're going back to medical matters now, and Britain's experiencing an acute shortage of hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah, it's used by about 1 million women in the UK. An increase in demand has led to the shortage, as data from NHS England shows that prescriptions for HRT have more than doubled in over the past 5 years.
Well, let's now go to my friend, former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis, who joins us. Hi, Sharon.
Hello, lovely to see you this morning.
Well, it's lovely seeing you. And, you're looking well, but you're here to talk about your experience with HRT. So just to explain to people, this is not menopause we're talking about. This is something that would be prescribed to delay or ease the symptoms of menopause.
Yeah, it's all linked with menopause. Menopause is something that happens to women in their 50s. For me, it was somewhere around my mid-50s. And I just started to feel not like me, really. A few night sweats, just feeling a little bit flustered and just not particularly happy. Now, some people get it extremely badly, but 80% of people that go through menopause get symptoms, and HRT treatment can actually help. But what's happened is that over the last 5 years, prescribing HRT has doubled, and we haven't really kept up with the supply of it. And I think things like, Davina's documentary earlier this year, which I did do a tiny part of, has shown people that the risk that they thought they had in the past of breast cancer is actually much smaller than it was perceived. In fact, you stand a bigger chance if you're overweight or you drink 1 glass of wine per day. So the fact that people were so scared of taking HRT is being more removed, and people are asking for help, which is great, because it really can improve the quality of your life. For me, it came because I went to a rodeo and managed to break 3 vertebrae in my back, and then went to see the doctor. And the doctor went, "Oh, I can see a little bit of osteopenia," which is what comes with osteoporosis. And again, HRT is one of those things that can really help that. So I thought, well, let's just use it and try to stave these things off. And it's been great. And this is what it's all about. This particular product here is the one that's really in shortage.
And Sharon, people are evangelical about it, aren't they? They say that it changed their lives almost instantly, perhaps within 3 days. They feel like themselves again. They think, gosh, I've been feeling so lacking in energy, and suddenly bouncing back. And yet to have that supply taken away from this 1 million women who are using it, we're hearing reports that many women are feeling suicidal. This is incredibly serious.
So why is it in shortage? Why is there a shortage?
Well, I think it's probably down to that supply and demand. Some of it, I think, is going to be COVID related. The fact that supply systems just don't seem to be working in lots of different things, whether you're wanting your HRT or whether you're wanting your passport. Nothing at the moment seems to be working the way that it should be working. I think that massive increase in demand, and I think the fact that, Davina and lots of menopausal groups have now been talking about how HRT really isn't as scary as people thought about it was in the past. And so therefore people have been going to their doctors and asking for it. You're right, there's about 1 million people in the UK at the moment that are using HRT, and about 30,000 of those, use this particular product. And this is the one that's really short supply at the moment, the Estrogel, which is just a gel that you put on your body and it gets soaked up, and it's just really easy. And you mix that with progesterone pill as well to make sure that you're looking after your uterus, and that's the sort of standard process. But you must make sure that you see your doctors and specialists, because everyone is different, and some things will work for one person and not for another.
Eamonn and I were talking about this interview before we did it, and Eamonn said, do you want to do this? Sometimes if it's a woman's issue, it often makes sense for the female presenter to do it. And I said, do you know what? Actually, it's really good to have men in this conversation, and they are increasingly, aren't they, Sharon? And you're very open to that, because you probably know more about it in many ways than
I suppose,
me.
as a partner, as a husband, you are affected by what your partner goes through. And to many people, as you were saying, Sharon, it's a lifesaver. It's how would you describe it for you? How would you describe it? We were using the term lifesaver. Is that a bit exaggerated?
I think for me, it was the osteopenia thing that was really quite scary. Being a very active person, wanting to go, bungee jumping and skydiving and rodeoing, the whole idea that I might end up with serious bone issues was going to curtail my life quite considerably. And so I wanted to cut it off for the past. Mood swings is something that affects everybody in the family. If one person isn't particularly happy and not functioning very well. So yes, very much, partners are involved with this. So I think everyone is slightly different. Everyone has very slightly different symptoms. The standard ones, as I said, are the hot flushes, the night flushes, the mood swings, the osteoporosis, which comes from a lack of estrogen as our bodies stop developing it. So these are the different symptoms, but some people really, really do struggle. And luckily I wasn't one of those, but I would be very upset if I didn't, wasn't able to use my HRT, because I know that it makes me feel a happier, more normal Sharon Davis. And I would be a little bit worried if I couldn't get hold of it.
And just on that point about men being part of the conversation, we're talking about it more and more, aren't we, as a society? I think when I was growing up, I don't really remember my mum talking about going through the change.
My mother said she was too busy to go through it.
Well, she did have a lot of children, including one in her late 40s. But, it is a thing that we are more aware of, and that has to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing. And I think, life has moved on, hasn't it? We are living longer. We're living more active lives for longer. We're working for longer. We're having maybe families later. I still got a 15-year-old son, even I'm 60 this year. So things have definitely moved on a few years. And I suppose in the past, we just, as women, just had to grin and bear it and put up with it. And I think now we're saying, no, we don't need to. Women's health is very important. It's not always had its full share of the research and the attention that it deserves. And this is something which I think is making a very big difference to a lot of women's lives.
But you feel for people who feel they need it, and the shortage is keeping them from it.
Absolutely. I think it's important. We're talking at the moment about, chemists being able to prescribe alternatives and things like that, because if you can't get hold of it and then there is no other option to try, that's where people are getting really panicky and worrying. And I think also it's worth thinking, please don't stockpile it. Some people are going out there and going, right, I've got 10 months supply. If you do that and everybody does it, it'll be like the petrol and we won't be able to get hold of it. Whereas if we just all take what we need, then the supply chain will kick back in again and it will be there.
Easy to say, isn't it? But we just have this weird psyche in this country of stockpiling things. Lovely to talk to you, Sharon. Thank you for being so open.
So Sharon, 60 this year. 60 this year.
Yeah, I know.
Looking
60
good,
this year.
Sharon.
I'm going to have a wake or something, I think.
Stop.
Well, listen, congratulations. Well done on that. I just dread when it happens to me, but you enjoy it.
I went to your 60th party.
Thank you. Sharon Davis there on that HRT shortage.
Lots of people getting in touch. Robert McMillan saying... I don't know what he's talking about, so I won't read out that to you. I just wanted to read an HRT email out, but we'll move on to other emails because we've got plenty of those, not least on the cost of living. This one from Brian says, under the proposals, vehicles that only just passed their MOT will not be looked at for another 2 years. So the chances of motorists driving around with bad tyres and dodgy brakes puts it all at risk, and that is the argument against that, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Where will we go here? So many.
Cost of living.
Your cost of living. What would help us lots is if they paid us the council tax rebate near the end of April and not had £150 rebate. Don't understand what that means. People are already making cuts on essentials, and I feel the government aren't aware of what people are doing to cope with this crisis. And I think there's a very good point that you raised there, Adam. I'd like to see the government price cap things that have gone expensive, like gas, electric and food. But you'll get lots of other people discussing about your life. This affects your life, and there we go.
I found an HRT email. I just want to finish on that, and then we'll go to the weather. Joe says most women have tried other ways of managing their symptoms before using HRT. I didn't sleep through the night for 10 years. I mean, can you imagine? Before I went on to HRT, 10 years of misery, of being exhausted and struggling at work. Well, Joe, I'm so pleased that you found some solution to that, and I hope you can get your hands on some much-needed HRT.
4 minutes now before 9 o'clock. We'll take a break, and we'll be back top of the hour.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a chilly start out there this morning, but actually most places are dry, most places are bright, and it's a day of sunny spells for the vast majority. High pressure clearly dominating our weather at the moment. It's drifting in from the north, so we've still got a bit of a chilly easterly breeze around the southern flank of that high, but with high pressure in place, light winds, clear skies, and as a result, a touch of frost in places as we start the day. But soon enough, with the sunshine, it will start to feel more pleasant as temperatures rise. It's still going to be a bit colder along the east coast of Scotland and northern England, but with less cloud compared to yesterday, actually, it's going to be pleasant enough this afternoon. Highs in Newcastle and Hull of 9 to 10 Celsius, Cardiff, Southampton, 14 degrees, Belfast, 12 degrees. So those temperatures are a little lower compared to the last couple of days. But I think for many, with the sunny skies and the light winds, it's going to be a fine day. Still some cloud drifting around, as will be the case overnight. Parts of northern Scotland will see a few showers, and across central Scotland some patchy cloud, likewise across the Midlands and East Anglia. Now away from the cloud, with again light winds and cold air in place, a widespread frost is expected in sheltered parts of the country. But once again, despite the chill tomorrow morning, plenty of blue skies out there first thing. Still some cloud floating here and there, particularly for eastern and central parts of England, perhaps northern Scotland. But plenty of places will just see sunny spells and it will stay dry. 14 to 15 Celsius, southern England, South Wales, 10 to 12 for northern England, 13 there for Glasgow, 12 for Belfast. Into Saturday, well, it stays mostly dry and bright. The cloud will thicken in the north later on. Sunny spells further south, and then some showery rain by sun.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Russia warns the UK that military sites could be targeted as a result of Britain's support for Ukraine.
Hello, very good morning. Good to see you just after 9 o'clock. It is a Wednesday morning, hump day, halfway through the week, 27th of April. This is breakfast. What are you laughing at?
Just when you come out with hump day, it just makes me laugh. It's all right.
Okay.
Just having a giggle.
This is breakfast with my
my
friend Isabel Webster here. I am Eamonn Holmes. This is GB News, and here's what's leading the news this morning.
Yes, our top story, Russia's foreign ministry has suggested that the Kremlin could bomb NATO sites in countries who've supported Ukraine, including the UK. It comes after the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, backed Ukrainian action within Russia.
All this comes as Britain's main supplier of ambulances suspends normal production to convert military vehicles into armoured ambulances.
Also today, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is once again under pressure from within his own cabinet colleagues to tackle the cost of living crisis, as new data reveals that 6 in 10 people have had to cut back on essentials like food and medicine to get by.
Please join us in anything you want to say. We've been reflecting those long and hard throughout the programme today. Get in touch, tweet at GB News. You can email as well, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And one last polite request this morning for a vote for us in the Trick Awards. Only a couple of days left to do that. trick.org.uk would be so grateful for your support.
Well, it also would be a tribute to you as well, because you have made this station. This station's 10 months old. It's not even a year old. We have only been here doing this for, not even 4 months.
Feels like 5 minutes.
But anyway, so far, so good. Just cast your vote, and as Isabel said, we would appreciate that.
OK, we are joined this morning by the Associate Editor of the Daily Mail. And what a day to have you in, Andrew Pearce, because, of course, the Daily Mail has been making headlines itself for the last couple of days. Your editor being summoned in a very grand way by the Speaker of the Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, for this article that ran on Sunday.
And they have replied, no, Mr Speaker, on that one. So this is all about the Angela Rayner scandal. Your paper very vehemently believing, standing by the story, saying that she has laughed and joked about comparisons with Sharon Stone.
Yeah, look, and the Mail on Sunday reported on Sunday that Tory MPs, they'd heard her describing herself as Sharon Stone in that famous film, basically, and saying, crossing and uncrossing her legs to distract the Prime Minister. We know Boris likes as an eye for the ladies. Cue enormous outrage over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, particularly from Labour women MPs. It's outrageous, it's misogynistic of the Daily Mail, of the Mail on Sunday. And we report in the Mail today, she appeared in a podcast with Matt Ford in January, laughing and joking about the Sharon Stone comparison, offering it up herself, crossing and uncrossing her legs, causing great laughter in the audience. So where was the outrage yesterday was confected. And as for the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, he's a very nice man, unlike his predecessor, John Bercow, who was ghastly and pompous and unbearable and was forced out. The Speaker summons the editor of the Mail on Sunday in the Commons to see him. It's not for the Speaker of the House of Commons to tell a newspaper or this TV station what they can and can't broadcast or report. So we said very politely, get stuff.
Yeah, and
we're not going.
In many ways, it's kind of like two separate issues, but except it isn't. It's kind of like arguing to protect one set of freedoms, you know, the rights of women, and taking away the freedom of the press in doing so, which isn't the correct way to do it. No right-minded person would argue that.
Newspapers hear things on the Commons terrace, even if alcohol is flowing. It's their job to report it. Now, some people may not like the way, the tone of the story, but that's freedom of speech. That's comment.
What's your mock outrage all about as well? You're talking about mock outrage in this. Football reporters, right?
Yeah.
They're told by managers, you're not coming up this tunnel, you're not allowed to ask questions, you're disrespecting me like that. Showbiz stories, right? There's loads of people you're told what you can ask and what you can't ask, and newspapers go along with it.
But here, we've been unrepentant, we've been campaigning for the free speech here. We are entitled to say, if the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party... Look, if Keir Starmer dropped dead, she's the Leader of the Opposition. She could be Prime Minister. We're entitled to say, if she jokes and laughs on the Commons terrace about how she lures the Prime Minister by swinging her legs. She's a very sexy woman, apparently. Doesn't do it for me. Women aren't my bag, as you may know.
She's very glamorous.
But she's glamorous and she's feisty. And we know that she mocked herself joked about it just in January. So what's all this outrage from her about?
Well, can I just bring in what Sarah Vine said in your paper today? She's, of course, used to be married to Michael Gove, will know Boris Johnson very well indeed, and she's come out and in her column today written, if I were Angela, I'd own this. The truth is she could dress skin a sackcloth and ashes and still put Boris off his stride.
Yeah.
Now, it's not just Angela who came out with this mock outrage, as lots of people are calling it. Boris Johnson also got involved in this, whether you want to call it a bandwagon. Lots of people saying that, you know, his wife was very much outraged by the comments as well. You know, but it's true, isn't it? Could Boris quite easily be put off by Angela Rayner in a sackcloth and ashes?
The only thing I'm going to say, and these are pictures from PMQ's last week, I was going to say he can't see, maybe he can see, but he certainly can't see when she stands up and he's sat down. Maybe when she sits at the side of Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Yes, so the pictures are there for anybody to analyse if they want.
Look, we know he's a red-blooded heterosexual man. He's on his third marriage. His current wife is about 25 years younger than him. He's got an eye for the ladies. Everybody knows it. And she made a joke about that in the podcast earlier this year. And we're completely entitled to report these things. People may not like it. They may not like the tone of it. But you take your choice. And the Speaker was out of order.
Sarah Vine's point about owning this. What do you think this will do for Angela Rayner's reputation, her profile, how people think of her? I mean, I was with her in Manchester recently, and people were treating her like a celebrity.
Yeah,
you know,
Keir Starmer, let's be honest, the Labour leader, is as wooden as the Forest of Dean. And she is punchy, she's feisty, she's good at the dispatch box against Boris. Boris finds it very difficult to clash with a woman. This won't do her any harm at all. And the fact that I think the fact that she was getting all indignant and cross with Lorraine Kelly yesterday, well, you know, a bit silly, really, because she could have known that this podcast would come to light.
I didn't see that, and neither would any of our viewers or listeners.
Of course, they were glued to us.
They were glued to us. But I do think here that Dawn Neeson, in her column in the Star today, has a very interesting point here. She's saying this is not sexism at all. This is classism. And the fact is, I mean, she says pretty much every industry has elements of misogyny. Angela and I have about as much in common politically as Bozo and the Truth. But I admire every working class woman who overcomes enormous odds to get to the top in a male-dominated, Oxbridge-dominated sort of world.
Yeah, well, and she is a working class girl. She's very proud of her roots. She was from a pretty dysfunctional home. She was pregnant at 16, she's done great. And the Tory MP who revealed this story to the Mail made the point, which I thought was rather appalling, actually. She said she can't cope with Boris with his Oxford debating skill, so that's why she crosses the legs. Okay. Actually, she can cope with Boris with his Oxford Union debating skills because she's very good at the dispatch box. She's a formidable politician. This won't do her any harm.
Yeah. Why does everybody assume the person who gave the story to the Mail was a man? Probably because the reporter realised that and reported it.
Three more MPs have come forward now, including a woman, Tory MP, saying, we heard her.
What about the criticisms of the tone of the article? I mean, I totally accept your argument that David Dillon was right not to go to speak to the Speaker, but there's been lots of criticism that the article didn't have to be framed in that way.
You can make that criticism.
And do you accept that?
No, I think the paper was entitled to represent it the way she did in that podcast. She thought it was hilariously funny. Then, now she doesn't, since the Mail... She said about the Mail story, it's perverted. Well, she wasn't saying that in the podcast in January. She was laughing and joking about it.
OK, what do you
Can't
say?
Have it both ways.
Will you have it both ways? Do you think it was perverted, or what do you think? Now, I want you to look at camera 6 here, right?
Yes.
And I want you to think of every civil servant who's working at home today.
Well, that's most of them.
And they're about to start their day now, and with the telly maybe on in the background, or the radio on or whatever. What would you like to say to them?
Go back to work. The reason you can't get your driving licence, the reason you can't get your passport is because they're all skiving at home. And remember, a lot of them, they work in London, get the London waiting allowance to help with their costs. They should refund that. They should all go back to work immediately. They don't want to go back to work. Give up the job and give it to somebody else.
Why don't we just let them work from home? And then that'd be a really good way for the Cabinet to solve this cost of living crisis. Sell off some of the civil service.
Isabel, the departments that have got the biggest problems, passports and DVLA are the departments where nobody's going into work, and also the Home Office where you can't get a visa if you want to get a Ukrainian family in. I'll tell you how you solve the cost of living crisis. The international aid budget is bloated. £14 billion a year we spend. Let's halve it. £7 billion.
All right.
Help our neediest, poorest families.
I'm not disagreeing with you. If I was looking to make cost cuts, that's exactly where I would go to first. Right. Why is there, again, all this outrage? First of all, I believe very little politicians say, but for instance, there's some deal with the foreign aid budget. It's, we'll fund your irrigation system if you give us secrets on the Russians or whatever it happens to be. You know, they all tell lies about why would you fund that? Why would you give India money when India's making nuclear bombs and sending people into space or whatever it happens to be? So the truth, politicians aren't transparent about why we cough up all this dosh. But I agree. And also, why is there so much outrage when you say, nah, we need this for starving kids at home in the UK and people who have nowhere to sleep and for the homeless and whatever it is. Why are they not outraged about that, but they're outraged about somebody who would be homeless in Rwanda?
I guarantee I would be attacked on social media for what I've said this morning, saying, oh, what, you're going to take it out on the world's starving and poor. No, I'm not going to take it out on them, but I'm going to prioritise the people in this country who can't pay their gas bill, their electric bill. So I'd cut the international aid budget by half. I would also say...
Well, it has already been significant.
It has been significant. It's promised to be raised again. It went down so many percent and they're going to put it up again tomorrow.
But it should be
Look, Isabel, still, if any of us were looking at our own finances and saying, where could we, what is necessary and what is not necessary?
But,
you're not going to send that check to
Let me do the
understand.
then. The counter-argument would be that the foreign aid budget is important because it is destabilising. If you suddenly have a huge population that are then going to migrate for economic reasons to try and... You have a huge problem in the Channel. We've seen how quickly you can see countries spiral into destabilisation.
It's not our job.
Well, it is because it's destabilising and that falls onto our shoulders. And then we have to sort out places like Afghanistan or wherever it might be.
And clothe and keep them warm. The other thing I would do, I would immediately remove the green tax in your electric and gas bill, which accounts for about 25%. That's an immediate reduction in people's bills straight away. And also, let's get the VAT off our fuel bills, which we can do because we left the European Union. Hello, Boris. We left the European Union. I voted for that. Let's start getting the Brexit advantages.
What I would say is, I think it's an issue that's made more complicated than it should be. And you can have arguments like, I could lie awake at night and thinking, oh, there's someone in Buenos Aires who's hasn't got a bed to lie in tonight or whatever it is. No, it is. It is a simple... Well, and do you know what I suggest, Isabel? Then I suggest you're not going around the United Kingdom and seeing poverty and you're seeing people in hardship and domestic abuse and alcoholism.
I'm just saying it's a benefit to many people. That would be the counter-argument.
If she was still with us, she'd say charity begins at home.
But no one's saying you shouldn't do that. Anyway, it's a debate, and I'm not nailing my colours to the mast. I'm just putting the counter up.
I have.
Yeah,
I'd at least halve it.
I would have more respect for a politician if they walked up and they said, if we don't do this, if we don't pay this money, this is what's going to happen. And believe me, we're getting secrets about the Russians under tables and whatever it is, and it will cause this mass political, geographic movement around the world. But spell it out to us. Don't treat us like fools and say, oh, we're very good people and we're doing this. They're not very good people and they're not doing it from the bottom of their heart. I don't believe a word of it.
They'll tell you it's about soft power. It gives Britain soft power on the international stage. What does that mean?
Well,
if we've got people who can't afford to pay their gas bills, stuff the soft power.
I think the government would be better off winning some soft power in somewhere like Scotland, where they haven't got much leverage.
If they announce this today, halving of international aid, they'd walk those local elections next week.
Right. We are finding money for Ukraine. The Foreign Secretary is going to speak about this tonight, and she wants people to step up to the mark and send more equipment to aid Ukraine. Now, fine, well and good, that's fine. But interestingly, we're just finding more and more people, not a huge amount, but a steady amount of people who are saying, why aren't you fixing the fuel crisis or the cost of living crisis at home? You're finding money for Ukraine.
They should find it from the international aid budget. That's what you do. Simple.
Yeah.
Very easy. And actually, we have a war in Europe for the first time. Serious war on our doorstep, the most serious conflagration since 1945.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's 2 hours away on a plane. And if Russia are allowed to dominate Ukraine, that will be next. Poland. They'll come after us.
Well, that's the world according to Andrew Pearce. Andrew, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice to be with you.
Yes, very
Normally
nice.
on a Monday, but say it's
I
nice
know.
on
Well,
a
it's
Wednesday.
a bonus appearance. We've enjoyed it. Thank you for coming in, and we'll see you next Monday.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
After the break, we're going to be talking to Kinsey Schofield. She's in LA for us this morning, talking about all the latest showbiz news, including a new documentary about the legendary Marilyn Monroe.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, for all of today's showbiz news, we're joined by Kinsey Schofield, who's live in LA for us. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Where are we starting, Kinsey?
Well, I would really love to tell you about this new Marilyn Monroe documentary. It's premiering today on Netflix in the UK. It's called The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, The Unheard Tapes, and it's about the 1962 death of Marilyn Monroe. But these tapes are based on over 600 taped interviews by an Irish journalist named Anthony Summer. He spent 3 years investigating Marilyn's death, and it explores a potential Kennedy cover-up, which I am all about these myths and legends and old stories. So I am all about this storyline, right? But yeah, I think that this is going to be, if you are a Marilyn fan, this is obviously a must watch. But what's so interesting is we are seeing so much new content.
Oh, we've lost our little connection.
Well, the whole thing is, Kinsey's saying there about they've got so much new content on this because of her last stars. Oh, she's here. She's
Are you a big Marilyn fan?
No, I'm a big fan of history and cinematography and all sorts
fan.
like that. Well, I mean, I do agree with you that yes, I mean, of course she is star and had star quality. I never overly liked her acting, though lots of people.
I don't really think of her acting when I think of Marilyn.
A lot of people always remember the late film critic Barry Norman said she was a superb actor, and I think Barry said I would take very, very seriously. Kinsey, sorry, you were just saying there was new material unearthed there before we lost your line.
Right. I mean, not to be dramatic, but are the Kennedys cutting off my internet connection because they don't want the truth told? Okay.
Or the
but
mafia.
yeah, a lot of new content being made. There's also the new movie Blonde coming out, which is a reimagined version of Marilyn Monroe. And then my favorite, in June, there's a movie coming out that actually reveals Marilyn Monroe's father, who we've never known. Marilyn never even knew who he was. Based on her DNA, the person that did her autopsy kept some of her hair. They utilized that hair and they got the saliva from somebody that's like the great-great-grandchild of her dad. So they utilized all this DNA to determine who her father was. So that's a new documentary coming out in June. So if you are a fan of Marilyn, a lot of content coming your way.
Well, this is amazing. The one that's coming our way on Netflix at the end of the month, April 27th. These are the unheard tapes they're talking about here. One of the most awful things, Kinsey, is she was just 36 years of age when she died.
I can't believe that, so young and such a sad, lonely person, not necessarily the woman that we saw on the screen with so much confidence and so much sex appeal. So I do think that hearing her voice, which you'll hear in this documentary, hearing her voice and getting a better understanding of who she was and what her struggles were, they say that the highlight of this movie and this documentary is actually those archives. And you get a much better sense of who she is through some of these tapes. But over 650 interviews and 3 years of research based on the 1985 book Goddess by Anthony Summer. I think it's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, agree with you. Now, Sienna Miller has been giving an interview, and she's talking about Jude Law. Give us the context of that.
Oh my gosh, one of my favorite old school Hollywood couples. And Sienna, definitely my favorite actress. I know that, we're a Kate Beckinsale program, Eamonn. I know that that's our preferred actress on Breakfast. But yeah, Sienna Miller, she's promoting Anatomy of a Scandal, also on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's a fabulous program. And she's been asked about Harvey Weinstein in these interviews. And she says that she really believes that her relationship with Jude Law, who was also, one of the top actors that Weinstein utilized at the time, she believes that he protected her and that he solely is the reason that Harvey Weinstein never sexually harassed her. And I thought that was really interesting because, like I said, they are one of my favorite old school couples. They were just such a beautiful couple and fascinating. She starred in Weinstein's Factory Girl. She played Edie Sedgwick, and it was a very sexy role. And there were rumors at the time, is she being harassed also? So we also saw, I don't know if you remember this, but Gwyneth Paltrow said that Brad Pitt had protected her against Harvey Weinstein. And Brad even admitted that he got in Weinstein's face because Gwyneth had told him that she felt uncomfortable by Weinstein. So interesting that the women that were really truly harassed, they did not have that male protector, or they didn't have that A-lister with the bigger name, or a name that could intimidate Weinstein. It's interesting to see who his victims were and how he kind of determined who he was going to go after.
Yeah, even more of a sort of misogynistic twist on it all. But like you, I love them as a couple, and I always kind of hope they do a benefit and get back together. But I think he cheated on her, didn't he, with the nanny? Don't want to go there. Anyway, Wicked is bringing out a movie, but it's being split into two to the horror of many fans. That's, of course, a hugely successful musical.
Right, and their fans are calling it a money grab. But I think that this is, keep in mind, the musical is 2.5 hours long with a 20-minute intermission. So that musical's probably 2 hours and 10 minutes, right? Well, the director is saying there's too much story to try to fit into one movie. And so they're splitting it into two. One's going to come out Christmas 2024. Another's going to come out Christmas 2025, an entire year. My God. But fans are upset. They say that there's no reason to split it up into two movies. It's a money grab. Ariana Grande is going to star in this, so she's got that fan base that's so eager to see her in this. And I think that they'll do more backstory than we're expecting, and I think we'll get new content. And I think we're going to love both movies. Let's put a positive spin on things, people.
Yeah. So people are saying on stage it's 2.5 hours, but in the movie, it would be 20 minutes longer, I suppose. How can't they tell the same story, or why can't they tell the same story in the same time? But very good. Lindsay, we've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you for all your time this morning, the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial as well, earlier in the programme. You work really hard for us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Bye, Isabel. Bye.
Bye. See you soon. That's it from us. We've got to go. Tom Harwood up next with the briefing. We'll be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a chilly start out there this morning, but actually most places are dry, most places are bright, and it's a day of sunny spells for the vast majority. High pressure clearly dominating our weather at the moment. It's drifting in from the north, so we've still got a bit of a chilly easterly breeze around the southern flank of that high. But with high pressure in place, light winds, clear skies, and as a result, a touch of frost in places as we start the day. But soon enough, with the sunshine, it will start to feel more pleasant as temperatures rise. It's still going to be a bit colder along the east coast of Scotland and northern England, but with less cloud compared to yesterday, actually, it's going to be pleasant enough this afternoon. Highs in Newcastle and Hull of 9 to 10 Celsius, Cardiff, Southampton 14 degrees, Belfast 12 degrees. So those temperatures are a little lower compared to the last couple of days, but I think for many, with the sunny skies and the light winds, it's going to be a fine day. Still some cloud drifting around, as will be the case overnight. Parts of northern Scotland will see a few showers, and across central Scotland some patchy cloud, likewise across the Midlands and East Anglia. Now away from the cloud, with again light winds and cold air in place, a widespread frost is expected in sheltered parts of the country. But once again, despite the chill tomorrow morning, plenty of blue skies out there first thing. Still some cloud floating here and there, particularly for eastern and central parts of England, perhaps northern Scotland. But plenty of places will just see sunny spells and it will stay dry. 14 to 15 Celsius, southern England, South Wales, 10 to 12 for northern England, 13 there for Glasgow, 12 for Belfast. Into Saturday, well, it stays mostly dry and bright. The cloud will thicken in the north later on. Sunny spells further south, and then some showery rain by Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begins